Thank you everyone for being around. We are doing the Small Council, which we do Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. We have a fantastic group of individuals. I'm really excited to introduce them and talk with these people. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, and consider joining membership by hitting that join button and becoming a YouTube member, supporting us that way as well. Thank you so much. All right, we'll start with Zonia. Zonia, I've missed you.
Yeah,
it's only been like a
back.
week. Yeah, it's been like a week.
It's only just been a few days. Thank you for having me back. Good to see all you guys. Chat as well. I've got chat closed right now, so I probably won't interact with you because my computer's been acting weird today. So sorry about that. You know I love you guys. And it's great being here. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever done a panel with any of these individuals, despite me knowing a couple of them fairly well. So this is kind of cool. New experience. And yeah, Zonia Dead at Twitch, if you want to follow me. I don't stream much these days, but once in a blue moon I do. And who knows, maybe I'll get back to it sometime. And thanks for having me back.
Thank you. Okay, next we have our friend Ninetails. Ninetails, we haven't had here in a long time. Ninetails, how are you? And update us on yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ninetails. Good to be back. Took a little bit of a break for reasons, but we don't need to get into that. That's in the past. Anyways, super great to be here. Thank you for having me. I've been through a lot of changes. I think I've grown a lot since the last time I was on here because I've done other panels and hung around some Discord VCs where people like to debate. I'm also thinking of doing more of my own panels because I want to hold more intellectual panels. That are specifically for that because I feel like the space is lacking that right now. I think it's a lot of drama fest and stuff like that. No offense, Prime. I appreciate that you have me on because I think the drama people think I'm a bit boring sometimes. But anyways, so that's one thing. And as a leftist, I'm taking a turn and trying to grow. I'm going to maybe a few years down the road publish my own theory that I'm currently working on called radical experimentalism. That's rooted in green socialism. So I'm going to be reading a lot of theory myself. I've already read a bit and my mind is expanding.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, next we'll go to Sansel, and we haven't had Sansel here for months and months and months, it feels like. Sansel, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty excited for this panel. I've been arguing with people on Twitter for the past couple of days about like electoralism and stuff. So I'm pretty passionate about, getting people out to vote. So this is the sort of conversation I think is really important right now. Do I just shut myself out basically right now? I play video games very badly, and I like to argue on the internet. I'm Sansel.
Thank you so much. All right, next we have Genevieve. Genevieve, thank you for being here. Genevieve reached out, wanted to be a part of this, so I was very happy to have them. Genevieve, introduce yourself to the audience and to me.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for having me, Prime. This is my first time on one of your panels, but I know we've been kind of chatting for the past few weeks trying to make it happen. I'm stoked that it's actually time right now today, so that's awesome. I'm excited to be here, and some familiar faces, which is cool. I am the best place to follow me. I'm most active on Twitter, so that's going to be Madam_Genevieve on Twitter, and that's going to have in my bio my links to anything else that I'm doing online, but I definitely update that more than anything else as far as my schedule, so go follow me there.
Okay, all right. Next, let's drop down to Jason Society. Jason, thank you for coming through. Well, you were here like 2 weeks ago, I think, right? It wasn't too long ago, but Jason Society, big member of our community. We're always happy to have him around. Thank you for coming through, buddy.
Yeah, sorry, I got some people just trying to get out of the way real quick here. But anyways, I am Jason Society, Jason_Society on Twitch, Jason Society, all one word on Twitter. I talk politics, talk a lot about cannabis, And I host a weekly panel show called Stonercast, where I bring on some of your favorite streamers like Smoke Weed, and we talk about all things weed. So you can check us out on Sundays at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you so much. Next, last but not least, we have my man MVP Joe Lewis, who is like Prince. He goes by like symbols apparently now. Thank you, Joe Lewis, for stopping by. Like, he hit me up just before we got started here. So I decided to bring him in because, well, he's always a fantastic contributor. So thank you for being here, buddy.
Yeah, sorry for the late reply. It's prom season, so it's been pretty busy, but figured I'd spend some time arguing on the internet in the downtime.
Do you
yeah, so
I was gonna ask, do you have to like chaperone people?
So there were 2 events that I DJ'd, 2 of which I chaperoned. Next weekend there's 5, so that's kind of cool, I guess is a word you can use. So it's pretty busy, and then like it's also wedding season at the same time, so events are coming back up, and then marching band season's back. It's fun. I didn't think this through when accepting gigs during the pandemic. So I'll push this date back. Yeah, we can do this in 2022, and now it's just kind of colliding into, which is good. Like, I'm glad to be back to work. That's fantastic. But obviously, like, how am I supposed to argue on the internet when you gotta work? Like, fucking lefties and getting jobs. Jesus. But yeah, either way, I'm glad to be here. Follow these other people. I'm partnered. No, it doesn't fucking matter what I do on this platform. So glad to be here either way.
We leave the capitalism to like conservatives, right? They get to be successful. We argue on the internet, all right? We're changing the world. That's what we're doing. Okay.
You can't be a leftist if you aren't poor, right? Isn't that what they say?
Hearts and minds.
Come. All right, let's get started then. I will read off the topic, which as always I don't have in front of me. Here it is. A Twitter user named Fauna of Flora made a post that accused lefties who are anti-electoral of being just as dangerous as conservatives. They claim that they are not allies and occupy racist, transphobic, misogynist, and misandrous space. Do you think this criticism is fair? Is there any reason to believe that anti-electoralism is a valid stance? And if not, is a person who shuns the ballot box actually complicit with bigots? Yeah, so this comes by way of our great friend Zonia. She had noticed this post. She had responded to this post, and I think it's a
and
super
then Amanda
interesting.
is the one who tagged you in it to get the attention on it.
Oh, if she tagged me like on Twitter, then
Yeah. So I
absolutely
responded, and then Amanda responded to me and tagged you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I am not gonna know then. If that's the case, yeah, because I'm not on Twitter like that.
True.
But the point is that this person had a very bombastic post, and it got a lot of attention. And I wanted to explore this topic. I actually might be like the big dissenting voice here. I'm just, I think I might be the big dissenting voice here, which is good because I'll take you all on. It'll be pretty easy for me. Sonia, we'll start with you.
Yeah. All right. So when I saw that post, so Fauna of Flora, first of all, I like them a lot. We engage a lot on Twitter and do back and forth and stuff and retweet each other. But I disagreed with them on that particular post, at least the way that it is painting people. I do think that there is a sort of complicitness to some degree, though. Like, I wouldn't say that people are occupying like a racist or misogynistic, etc., place here, wherever it is that you live, whatever government. I would say that what I decided to kind of do was rephrase it as, if you are, if there is an election that you can participate in, and there is a conservative, they're occupying a position in government that is up for re-election, or a conservative running for that position, then you are enabling whatever harmful policies it is that you are having to deal with. So by not participating in the electoral process, and voter disenfranchisement is a big deal, and voter apathy is a big deal, but we can't allow that to just prevent us from actually taking action in the electoral process, because that is enabling whatever harmful electoral representatives or elected representatives are in the system, and whatever harmful policies they're enacting or advocating for, etc. So that was the way I wanted to paint it, was narrow it down more specifically to what is actually happening there. And that's my position on this one.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to Ninetales.
Yeah, so just to lay my cards on the table, coming up to my radical theory, I realized that there's going to need to be a way to incorporate electoralism into this, because you need to be able to occupy land, and the established states need to respect the sovereignty of the experimental ones, just as much as the experimental ones need to respect the other people who live on that land. But that does mean fighting from within. I don't think that means, overthrowing the system in the physical sense. So I would imagine that's some sort of voting reform, voting more and more for people who particularly support the idea of, letting these communities flourish, and maybe even supporting them so that way they can be true experiments, but not going to get into that. There's a lot of caveats to this, though, when I say I lean towards it, because on the negative side of things, electoral politics does sometimes force people to vote against their issues, especially in a two-party system. That is a huge negative for radical politics. I think the U.S. needs to work on a way to get further left parties more popular. Sorry, the American left does. And same here in Canada. I don't think we have some energy for the NDP, but that's more like a washed out workers' party, in my opinion. I think Green is like the thing we should be focusing on. But aside from that, the main issue is, generally speaking, the majority isn't going to reflect the issues of the left. So there's some point where we need to either find a way to change that or to diverge, and that's really difficult. But in favor of it, there's a lot we can do, and most importantly, I think it is a massive tool for making sure the pathways to more revolutionary societies is open.
Ansel.
Yeah, so I am, Allah forgive me, a liberal. So I really enjoy voting as a way for people in a country to express their desires and have their values kind of lived out in the electoral system. I think that by withholding your vote, or by I would even go a step further in saying that voting for a third party, at least in the current paradigm that we're in right now, is implicitly voting for whoever wins, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. And if you're in an area that is either purple or red, then you're basically just ceding a vote to Republicans. So I would say that we need to get more people out to vote. If you are anti-electoralism, you're like incredibly fucking cringe. Revolution isn't going to happen. It's especially not going to happen in the United States. And yeah, I'm sure that we'll get deeper into it when we get into open discussion.
I'm Genevieve.
I think that voting is such an important right that we have, and a privilege that we have really to exercise whenever we can participate in an election. I think that in this tweet, they specifically call out people who identify as being on the left, but then choose not to vote. And that's really confusing to me, honestly, to claim to be supportive of a political side or movement. You want to benefit from their work and their efforts, but then you do nothing to support it. Definitely feels hypocritical to me. I think actions speak a lot louder than words. Voting is something that's super important, not only on a national level, I think even more so for a lot of us on a more local level as well. And I think that is one thing that flies contrary to people arguing that, my vote doesn't matter. You really can make a huge impact on your local government by making sure you're involved in those elections as well. And that is going to have an impact on you. So I definitely would encourage everybody who is able to vote and to make sure your voice is heard.
I mean myself. Let's go to Jason. I apologize.
Sure. Sure. I read the tweets and I thought, wow, these are the language is pretty fucking vicious. They're really going in, and I guess I can see a perspective to that. I am very much in favor of electoralism. I think we need to vote. I think it's very important for the process of trying to make change, because I think what you have is you have a system where even if we do all the other things, like let's say we protest, let's say we organize, let's say we do all these other things, to what end? Because we are still in an electoral system. We still need to vote, because that's the system we're in. You're not going to win anything if you're not playing the game at all. And do I think that there's complicity when people don't vote based off of their beliefs about the government, or their apathy towards the government? I think there's a bit of complicity, some passive complicity there, sure. I think it behooves us all to vote, and I very much encourage people to vote on a regular basis. So, that's where I lie with it. I think, in a sense, they're right. I don't know that I would be as harsh as they were about it, but I absolutely think they're correct.
And finally, Joe Lewis.
I think that there's a lot of problems with electoralism in the United States, and I'm not going to fault anybody who chooses not to vote. There's always this sort of like individual level on these approaches to these problems, and it's the same critique that I have with this tweet, where it's like, oh no, I'm not going to vote. Well, you're a fascist and you're a racist, and it's like, okay, and nigga, like, what are you going to do about it? Like, you're going to do shit. You're just going to be upset, and then you're going on to the next thing. The thing that I'm very concerned about, and this is like kind of thing that I'm frustrated with, is that when you have so time and time again individuals that are on the ballot that do not represent the ideals, the policies, the practices that you care about, what are you supposed to do? And then what happens is you get a lot of the liberals who go for sort of like the pragmatic argument of like, well, you're voting for the lesser of two evils. And it's like, neither of these individuals represent my values. They don't represent what I stand for. So why should I be forced to vote? I personally consider non-voting a decision that you can make, and it's a totally fine decision. Now, something that I would totally be in favor of supporting is the expansion of understanding why people are not voting. That is something that doesn't exist in the electoral process right now at all, where somebody chooses not to vote. There's no sort of follow-up to understand why they're not participating in the process in the first place. There could be a lot of reasons for that. It could be due to what I'm talking about in terms of ideas and values. It could have something to do with their work situation, like something to do with their current life situation. But we see time and time again that, like, if we want to extrapolate this tweet, there's a lot of people who aren't voting. So there's a lot of racists, transphobes, fascists, and that's not necessarily productive. But I also think it's unproductive to just tell people that they should vote no matter what without taking an honest observation of the electoral process and how we can make it better. But again, I'm not gonna waste time trying to like, well, if you're not voting, you're part of the problem type of shit. Like, if people choose not to vote, that's their prerogative. But I'm more concerned about why people aren't voting and why the electoral process is so fucked in a vast majority of states. So.
Yeah, and I'll give my opinion. I'm closer to Joe on this one, in that I think that it's easy to point fingers at individuals who aren't voting, but I feel that oftentimes the onus needs to be on our elected officials to convince them to vote. I think that for many people, they're not for all, but for many, they're making an honest assessment of the choices they have, and they find them lacking. That can be for a variety of reasons. But we just say, hey, you just got to go to the ballot box. Go to ballot box for what? To get what? For what results? I think if the best you have is to say that things will get worse otherwise, right? Like the other side is just so scary it'll get worse. You're not going to get very far with that. But yeah, when everyone else. All right, so let's go to Zonia and then Ninetales.
Yeah, so overall, like I would say, definitely don't demonize the abstainers. I think that's really important. I think that's part of the problem that we've had with a lot of animosity and a lack of willingness to understand why it is that people are abstaining from votes in the first place. There's a lack of empathy. And people are too quick to kind of say, oh, you're the problem. Like I remember that happened when Bush won in 2000. And I remember that when Trump won, the same kind of thing happened, just demonizing abstainers and demonizing third party voters. And that's not solving the problem. That's simply just creating more animosity and more division and not actually recognizing why it is that people are wanting to vote for you in the first place or vote for your candidate in the first place. And so it's very important to make sure that we don't just simply dismiss these things as you filthy abstainers and instead try to understand what is causing the abstaining from voting.
Ninetales, please.
Hi, yeah. So, first of all, I do want to say, and this is partially in response to Jason's introduction, when I say that I lean towards it, I don't mean under our current system. In fact, I have a huge issue with how people are expected to vote in a system that doesn't represent them. And I do think this is contingent on the idea that they are able to vote for their interests in the first place. And that's commonly not the case. And that's why saying, well, this is the way the system isn't really a good argument for the people who aren't voting. I think the left overall just does a bad job talking to voters who have abstained, talking about it. That tweet that this is referencing is a good example. I don't think that's very constructive criticism. I do think the context of this, from my best guess and just from seeing the overall backlash on Twitter, is actually how in Ontario, the Conservative Party basically won the provincial elections, basically kind of like a landslide. And it was very sad and a big swing for us in terms of our elections. And a lot of people abstained. And I was very let down by the way the left talked about it. Like, not everybody's terrible, but we do have to look into these factors, like the material conditions and stuff like that. So as it stands, just to be clear, when I say I lean towards it, that's just like when I'm sitting on the fence. But in general, I am not happy with the way that things are at the moment at all. I think the left needs to do, to build off of Madame Genevieve's point, the left needs to do more to actually build things like on the grounds for so that way more people will vote and also influence more politics, and just do a better job supporting narratives of like politics that exist. I may not be a good example of that, but I'm not trying to be a politician either. My last point is that we do have to think about this as logistics. I don't think that just because somebody doesn't do electoralism in their activism, that doesn't mean, they're not doing a good job. There's a lot of ways that you can do leftist activism, and expecting people to focus on both. And that doesn't mean voting. As far as voting goes, that does kind of make sense for to expect people like to do that in a vacuum. But as far as just because a leftist cause isn't trying to promote voting for a particular candidate, they're not necessarily doing a good job. And we do need to focus on caring for the underclass and promoting them and our voices just as much as we, if not more, than we focus on electoral politics. Oh, and my chat pointed something out. I was going to say it too, but they just reminded me. Voting, not voting is not the same as voting for no one. When you actually submit the ballot with no one on the ballot, just to be clear, statistically, that is more significant than simply not going to the polls.
Sorry, what was that last part? Could you? Oh.
Yeah, I don't
it makes it's more meaningful for people who are abstaining their votes to actually go to the polls and mark no one on the ballot than submit it, because then there's at least a ballot to be counted, and you're
because you get turnout, and in addition to that, it shows the lack of faith in turnout, as opposed to just being, apathetic or uninterested.
Mhm.
So like if you're,
how does that even affect anything?
Like if you're a researcher, if you're a researcher and you want to find a link to current trends or popular dynamics in society, and you want to say look, here's evidence that people actually feel disenfranchised from the voting system, then an empty ballot is more significant than no vote at all, because there can be many other material reasons that people just don't go to vote, but it doesn't mean that they're not politically active in their minds.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I want to know from all the people that keep on saying that people aren't being represented. We live in a representative democracy, right? People who go to the polls elect people that go into office and then, vote on things that broadly align with their values. So in like what way are y'all meaning people aren't being adequately represented?
I don't
See, my
understand that
problem with-
statement.
yeah, my
are you-
problem.
Is
That's
there
why I'm
a, is
asking.
there an absence of understanding that people advocate for a particular policy and certain candidates might not even advocate for that policy at all? Like, I don't understand what that says. What you're trying to say there? Can you rephrase
Yeah,
it?
so can I just quickly jump in? We can also describe this as a conflict between the voting body and their interests and the interests proposed by the people who are up for election.
Okay, but the people that propose things that are up for election, like broadly speaking, they will vote in their like what their constituents want them to vote for, right?
Do you think that there's a difference between constituents and an electorate in this case?
Can you like make the distinction for me?
I'm asking you if you understand a distinction between constituents and an electorate. That's my question.
Well, I'm asking you to like explain it to me because I'm
Well,
not.
I'm at, so do you, so
in the context of what we're talking about,
try your best. Like, what do you see as a constituents and what do you see as an electorate?
Constituents. So electorate would be the people that are voting, and constituents are the people that are within the district of the people. Is that where the distinction that you're
I'm
making?
trying to ask what you believe those terms are.
That's what I just told you.
So let's start with an electorate. What do you believe an electorate to be?
People that go out and vote in their interests, probably.
Well, it's eligible voters in electorate, right? So it's
Well,
basically anybody
consider-
who has the opportunity or has the option to vote. Right? That's the electorate.
I consider evangelical Christians as an electorate within the Republican Party. Do you agree with that statement?
Sure.
Now, constituents, in this case, we'll use this. We'll make it similar. We'll make it the same thing. The constituents and electorates. It doesn't matter which term you use. It just means that a political interest group or some interest group within a voting base. So we'll use that as a definition. Is that okay to proceed with that idea?
Sure. Yeah.
Great. So if evangelical Christians do not feel that the Republican that is currently on the ballot supports the policies that they want, what do you believe that they should do? Should they still vote for that Republican, or should they choose to vote for an alternative candidate that supports the things that they're interested in?
Well, if an evangelical is like going out to vote and they want to see their values kind of enacted into law, they should probably vote for whoever is most aligned with that, or vote for someone in the primaries that is the closest to their values as possible. Right?
What if that candidate isn't within a third party?
What if that candidate is within a third party?
Yes.
Or isn't?
Let's say the candidate that is aligned with their views is within a third party.
Well, I mean, they can vote for that person, but like effectively they're throwing their vote away because we have a two-party system that we have two parties that are in power right now.
Okay,
right?
So because two parties are in power, that means that people shouldn't vote for candidates that.
Well, if they care about changing things, yeah.
I'm not. That's not tracking for me. You're gonna have to really walk me through that.
Well,
okay, so if you actually if you understand the fact that like the Green Party doesn't have any power in the United States really, and if you recognize that the Libertarian Party doesn't have any power in the United States right now, right? Then you're essentially throwing away your vote.
But again, that's not tracking for me. So
Why?
I asked you specifically, so you feel that groups of electorates, in this case, we'll use evangelical Christians, should vote for candidates that encapsulate their values and beliefs. Do you agree with that?
What I'm trying to say is, if you are like trying to enact change, there are specific values that you want, right? And you recognize the fact that there is a two-party system right now in the United States, right? Then you should probably vote for whoever is closest aligned to your values, given the choice between two options.
And if nobody is aligned with the two options, they should not vote for a third party candidate. What should they do with
Well,
their
I
vote?
just
that
said
you consider,
what I just said was
what
they
do you
should vote for who
consider? What
is
do you consider?
the
What do you
closest.
consider? What do you consider valuable for them? Voting for a candidate that lines up to their beliefs and what they advocate for, or not voting at all? Because those are the two options that you're currently presenting. It's either
I'm saying vote for whoever has is the closest to your set of values
within the
So
two parties, though. Correct?
Yes, because otherwise you're not going to get a libertarian elected.
So what is if evangelical Christians believe that neither the Democrat that's being brought up on the ballot and the Republican that's being brought up on the ballot represent what they want, why should they vote for a Republican? Why should they vote for a Democrat? What value is there?
What value is there? Well, at the very least, you're going to be voting for someone that is closer to your values and probably isn't going to vote against, vote to enact things that you're like diametrically opposed to, right? So let's take.
I'm having trouble with this proximity.
I can see that. Yeah. What is the trouble?
It doesn't make sense. I'm just trying to understand where it's coming from. Like, why is the closeness? Like, I'm saying that there's no equal interest. There's no interest that evangelical Christians in this hypothetical have with either candidate. So what's this proximity?
So you're saying that I don't understand in this hypothetical how there can't be one candidate that is closer to their values than the other.
We can move on from that. I don't know how to engage
because I'm asking you, right? If you are
okay, go for it.
It doesn't matter, because if neither candidate fucking is expressing your interest in these two parties, and there's a third party candidate that does, fucking vote for the third party candidate.
Okay, but let's take an example that we will more. Let's take an example for that we would all be like a little bit more close to home, that we probably all care more about, right? Let's talk about like trans issues, right? Right now, Republicans are in power at the state level in a lot of different states, and they're enacting all these anti-trans bills, right? Now, Democrats might not have the full best-based opinion on trans people, right? But generally speaking, a Democratic politician isn't going to do anything nearly as egregious to trans people as a Republican would. So if you withhold your vote as a Democrat, or you vote for the Green Party, right? Someone who's not going to get elected into office because most people don't either line up with the Green Party or with the Libertarian or whatever party, right? If you vote for a third party, they're not getting elected. You're basically voting for whoever wins, right?
Well, that's a great hypothetical, because I have spoken to a lot of trans individuals, and they've articulated to me in different ways that certain people within my district and do not represent trans people, period, whether it be Democrat or Republican. So if you are trans and if you don't have somebody that you feel is representative of that, what should they do? And then if there's a third party candidate that clearly in their messaging and in their rhetoric overtly has trans people in the forefront, are you saying that they should not vote for them because it's a two-party system, or are you saying that they should vote for them? I'm trying to understand where you're at.
And Sanso,
okay, so if there is a party,
I'm gonna let you finish. I'm just gonna say, I'm letting everyone know that after that, Zonia, Genevieve, Ninetails, Jason, just letting them know. Go ahead, Sanso.
Okay, so if there is a Democrat that is not explicitly in favor of trans, like a pro-trans legislation, right? But there is a Republican who is explicitly anti-trans, you would probably want to vote for someone who is more in line with your values, even if they're agnostic on it, or if they are neutral on it, or whatever. That's better than being like on the opposite end of the spectrum on it and being like anti-trans.
So,
right?
So you're saying within the two-party system that we're under, a trans individual should vote for, in this case, in this hypothetical that we're laying out here, a Democrat over a third-party candidate that overtly recognizes them within their politics.
Yes, because that politician isn't going to be elected and actually represent them.
So then my question to you then is, what do you think is more valuable here? Trying to uplift third-party candidates so that they're competitive, or catering to Democrats because third parties are inoperable currently?
I would say
what's
that
more valuable to you?
I would say it's more valuable to vote for Democrats because, like, number one, if we're trying to uplift third-party candidates, we're not going to do that by voting for third-party candidates in the current system. Right now, we don't have we have first past the post still like going on. We don't have ranked choice voting. We don't have anything like that. So without those things, a third-party candidate isn't going to be elected. What
Do you
party is
think that
more
there's a way
likely?
to-
Well, hold on, really quick.
Sure.
What
yeah.
party is more likely to start advocating for like ranked choice voting or some other system of voting that would be more inclusive to third parties? Well, right now it's going to be more progressive Democrats, right, rather than Republicans.
How can you quantify that statement?
Because
Like, where do
can
we
look
see
at,
this advocacy?
Sure, we can look at people like AOC and Ilhan Omar who have expressed interest in that sort of thing. We can look at basically any like progressive, like at the state level. Some centrist Democrats, I don't know, like at the state level, which ones have expressed interest at that, because I don't know all politicians. I don't have all knowledge of all politicians in my mind. But generally speaking, if you're going to be looking to increase the power of third-party candidates, you're going to want to vote for someone that's going to get rid of first past the post, enact some kind of ranked choice voting, et cetera, et cetera.
What has their argument of third party or really like ranked choice voting looked like? Like, what have they explicitly said? Because you mentioned AOC and someone else I don't remember, but
Well,
what
they
have
implemented
said?
ranked choice voting in New York because of AOC championing it, right?
Sure, that's one candidate, but I want to know what the language of that looks like. What does that
Well,
look
I don't
like?
have an exact quote on me right now. I know that they've been at least like outwardly supportive of the idea of ranked choice voting, right? And if
Sure.
AOC got it to happen in New York, right? I don't see why we wouldn't think that this is possible.
Sure, and I guess to close out this exchange, the thing that I'm kind of stuck on is I don't see how you can say that somebody who or tell any individual that if there's a candidate that directly aligns with what they believe in, that they shouldn't vote for them and they ought to vote for something within a two-party system. I don't understand that level of advocacy, and maybe like we're probably not gonna have time to get into like where that comes from, but I'm good with it for now. Thanks for the back and forth.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. All right, so we'll go to Zonia, Genevieve, Ninetales, Jason. I'll probably take a turn afterwards because I thought some interesting things happened here. Can you hear the background noise on my end?
No.
Like a popping sound? Oh, fantastic. Because that fucking happens all the time. Whatever, Zonia, please.
Yeah, so I think Sansol, one of the things that is, and why I think maybe Joe using evangelicals is sort of a bad example, is because with marginalized groups and minority groups, there's a bit more of an awareness of a lack of representation and more extreme lack of representation in general. And so definitely feeling in a situation where it's like, okay, well, nobody represents me. I may as well cast my vote into another party because there's somebody over there who at least represents me and my community and my family and such. And so there's a more willingness to do it. And one of the things where the like Republican Party gets a lot of its strength and power in voting and having movements is that they're very quick to fall in line and very quick, even if they're not fully represented and accurately represented by the candidate, they'll oftentimes fall in line behind the Republican candidate just to get the win, right? But you have a lot of underrepresented groups who tend to flock more toward the left to find some representation there. And if they don't find that representation, they're going to want to look for that representation elsewhere. And so if it's not in the dominant party on the left, they're going to look to third parties and sometimes even move to the right if they can find a representative over there who at least seems to be trying a little bit to represent them, even if it, oftentimes turns out to be pandering. So, which unfortunately, a lot of the representation of marginalized groups in the Democratic Party tends to end up being just very hollow pandering. And so by the time the candidate gets into office, they don't make good on the promises. All the stuff that they were trying to promise for marginalized groups suddenly becomes an afterthought with no priority to it whatsoever. So I can't really fault anybody for basically going and saying, I'd like to give my support to somebody who at least tries to represent me. And if enough people do that, it will eventually bubble up a candidate somewhere along the lines who may win in the electoral process. But yeah, I don't know.
If they wanted to vote for someone
one.
that was going to represent them, then they would probably vote for someone that actually has a chance of winning, right? Like, if we're going to be looking at someone like Jill Stein, who has zero chance of being elected, right? If you vote for her, you're not going to get that person into office, even if they do have your favorite policy at the forefront of their mind. It's never going to be put into policy because that person's never going to see the Oval Office. They're never going to see the Senate. They're never going to see Congress. They might see it at a local level, and you can advocate for those sorts of things at a local level. I think that's a lot easier, right? But you would have to get some sort of grassroots movement to get that person elected, especially at the local level. That could actually lead to these third parties getting some sort of electoral gains at the federal level. But right now, voting for a third party at the federal level is just throwing your vote away.
Well, so the catch, though, the part that I don't think you're seeing is that depending on where you live and what your issues are that you have to deal with as a member of a marginalized minority group, everything may be really, really bad. And it may look like, well, nothing's really going to change anyway. So I'm going to put my vote where I think there's somebody who at least try to change things, even if they don't have a chance of winning. So if you're a trans woman living in a rural part of America that is not very progressive, and it's dangerous just for you to go outside, and you can't even get a job, like a normal everyday job, because of the kind of hostility you have to deal with, well, then you're not even going to be motivated to vote for a lukewarm, pandering Democrat who's never actually going to implement any policies to make your life better. You would rather just cast that vote for somebody who, if you happen to get lucky, they win, the election, and finally you've got somebody who represents
involved.
You.
That's the problem. It's not like you get a whole bunch of votes, and then they take all those votes and then they put the names into a hat and they pull out one, right? Yeah. It's not like you're like increasing your odds by voting for a third party.
Let's say
right? You have to reach a certain
luck,
threshold,
right? But
that takes time and advocacy, right?
Does.
And in the meantime, while you're doing that advocacy. Right. Well,
when your life is all about survival.
Well, if you're thinking about it enough to where you're like, okay, well, this Green Party person has trans stuff at the forefront of their mind, right? You're probably like politically knowledgeable enough to know that this person's not going to see any. They're not going to see the office. They're never going to be elected, right?
Why do you keep going to that point?
I'm sorry, I gotta let
not
some people
seeing. I just want to understand where that comes from.
I gotta let some people.
Yeah.
I mean, look at every election in like U.S. history, or not U.S. history, at least modern U.S. history.
Let's move on because we got a few people waiting. All right, so we'll go to Genevieve, Ninetales, Jason. I'll jump and take a turn after that.
I think when it comes down to the general election, it is really important to look at the two parties that are involved and choose the one that is more closely aligned with your values, even if it's not perfect, because those are the two choices that are really going to be valid in this option. I think that it is absolutely respectable and valid, and something I would encourage for people to do in the primaries is to vote with your beliefs, vote for somebody who might not be the obvious choice at that point, because that's where your voice is going to have more of an impact, and you're going to be able to hopefully, as part of a group who also supports that candidate, influence the ultimate candidate that goes on to represent the left in this instance.
Genevieve, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So in my district, District 12 in New Jersey, we had two candidates on there, Bonnie Watsman-Coleman and Darius Mayfield, one in the Republican primary and the Democrat primary. They both ran uncontested. And what I'm going to pose to you, if somebody believes that Bonnie Watsman-Coleman of the Democrat Party does not represent them in an uncontested race, what do you think they should do? And then also, what would you want to see? And I guess what's your thoughts overall about uncontested races in the United States?
In general, I would say if you live in a district where somebody is running uncontested, then that's an incredible opportunity to figure out what person in your community could represent you and could run for that position as well. And I would challenge everybody to look at that. You see someone like AOC who decided to run even though she was an unlikely candidate, and she's now having a huge impact on us. I think that in general, if there is an uncontested election, that just should be even more reason for people in the community who might not support that candidate to get involved.
Can I load this a little bit?
Yeah.
So in District 12, Bonnie Watsman-Coleman has defeated every Democrat that's competed with her definitively. And we're talking in the 80 to 90 percentile. So it's greater than 85% in every single primary that she's run. So what should a Democrat do in a situation like that, where the incumbent has that much political power, where any Democrat that's posited gets defeated definitively?
Then I would try to have a group effort to pressure her to consider whatever it is that you're disagreeing with her on. So I think that should be a dialogue that then if 85 to 90% of the Democrats of your group are in support of her, then she's going to have the majority vote. Okay, let's start a dialogue now about how she could represent the remaining 10 to 15% of people better. And I think that that's something that anybody who's a representative should be concerned with.
Okay, if there's an uncontested election, then why are we even talking about voting? Then just tell someone from the Green Party to run.
I want to, okay, that was very stupid to say. So I'm going to walk you through why that was really stupid.
Please.
I'll walk you through to the best of my ability. Now, just because
something you said,
because a candidate is on a ballot in this situation doesn't make what I said any less factual. Where in this case, Bonnie Watsman-Coleman rolls over any candidate that's put in front of her, Democrat or Republican. Additionally, and maybe this is what you're trying to get at, and maybe I'm being uncharitable here, is that do you feel that by having a third party candidate in the situation of two uncontested races, that would change the outcome? Is that where you're coming from with that?
Okay, are you talking about in the primaries? Maybe I missed a key part of this, but...
Well, we were talking about primary races, and there's a lot of races in the United States, even this past primary cycle, that ran uncontested, and currently even in this cycle run uncontested.
Okay, well, I guess like if you want to...
And this is the House of Representatives, by the way, to be clear. Yeah. We're not talking about local politicians and just doing in their state Senate and legislature. These are candidates who are going into Congress, running uncontested.
Okay, well, if there's someone that's running uncontested, either like try and get someone that either run yourself, get someone that more aligns with your values to run, or I guess like at that point, if it's uncontested, you can vote third party because it's not going to be that much of a problem. I don't really care what people do during the primaries, because that's where you're selecting.
Well, this would be the general. Right? Like at this point, you're talking about the general because they've already ran.
That's why I'm confused. I'm trying to figure out where we're. Maybe I'm just confused. That's why I'm trying to.
We can't take too long because I do want to get to Ninetales because she's been waiting patiently.
Yeah. Sure. So I guess, I'll organize this thought and come back to me. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, let's go to Ninetales, Jason Society. Then we'll go to our friend Joe, and then I'll take a turn after her. All right. Go ahead, Ninetales. You're muted, friend.
Okay, now my hotkey worked. I just want to say I love having Joe on here because he is like making sure that I don't have to make a lot more points than I normally would. Every time I'm thinking maybe I should write down a response here, Joe's on it. So thank you, Joe. I do still have some points left. First of all, the first on, so this is going back a bit, but the financial interests of politicians do not often reflect the full interest of voters. Asking them to compromise probably makes them feel like shit, and I don't think it actually like gets people to vote. 2 more points. Telling people that every vote counts is hyperbole and probably also does a better job. That does a better job shaming people or potential voters, most importantly. Actually, what I had written down for Sansa was asking them to compromise will make them not want to vote in this case. So I kind of got them mixed up. And I think it's better to focus on undecided voters than it is to worry about the people who didn't vote. Now, I'm not saying there's not a lot of people who don't vote, but I think we're assuming a lot of things. Like, first of all, how Sansol assumes that politicians just instantly reflect the voting body or the interests of the voting body, when also they clearly worry about funding their campaigns just as much. And the second one is we don't know what the minimal limit is for actually getting everyone to vote in an idealized system. So I don't think it's 0% of people won't vote in a perfect system. I think even in a perfect system, some number of people won't vote, and we have to ask ourselves, how far are we from that? And when we do see trends away from majority of people voting, how can we explain that better than just like, oh, you did a bad job, you don't care about these politics or whatever?
Okay, so I don't think there's been any person in U.S. history who has tried to run on getting all the people who don't vote to vote for them that has ever been elected. You can look at Bernie Sanders running for the president. You can look at there's like a lot of examples of people who are trying to get some silent majority of people that just never vote to come out and vote, right? This isn't something that happens, right? But to what you said about like the financial interest, it doesn't seem like financial interests play that much of a role in terms of getting people or getting Congress people to vote against their I'm going to use constituent, I hope that's okay, their constituents' interests, right? The people that vote for them generally align with the kinds of things that the corporations or the businesses or the institutions, whether educational or whatever, like the people that fund those politicians generally align with those politicians in the polity anyways. So I don't really buy the financial interest thing anymore. And then you said every
You're not from Arizona or West Virginia, apparently.
I'm not. So every vote. Well, I mean, it seems like Joe Manchin and Sinema were elected by the people in their states. Joe Manchin, I think, unless something changed.
I worked on Sinema's campaign, and she had a lot of progressives, and she made a lot of progressive promises that she walked back when she got elected.
Yeah, and Sinema's.
To say that politicians don't look at their own financial interests when they make these decisions and won't vote against their constituencies because of financial interests.
We can look at Sinema. Wait. I just really.
I would like to respond, by the way.
Well, so number one, Sinema's poll numbers have gone like drastically down because she's done that, right? So she might lose her re-election campaign. But like Manchin seems to be doing just fine with West Virginia. So unless something has changed since the last time I looked at his poll numbers, it's been a hot minute. All right. But the people of West Virginia seem to like Manchin for the things that he represents, kind of more economically left in terms of like U.S. left, right, while still being socially conservative. Now, to the every vote counts thing, are you saying that every vote doesn't count? Because they do. Trump lost by the thinnest of margins in 2020 to Joe Biden in Georgia. All right. Every vote there counted.
Like, if you're going to bring up Trump, though, that kind of like begs the question, did every vote count when he ran against Hillary? And I'm just saying it's hyperbole. I'm not saying it's not true.
Rob Noor's not here. We won't get the banger state response, okay?
I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying that they don't count. I'm saying the range at which we say it counts I think it does a better job shaming people who don't vote, like I said.
Well, like if you were...
I think that we should shame people that don't vote.
Bringing up financial interest. Can I finish my response, please?
Yeah, but we should shame these people that don't vote.
No, I think there's smarter things to do. But bringing up the financial interest, I would be like, I'm pretty confident in what I'm saying, particularly because America does a great job like pushing out anti-corporate candidates who refuse to take lobbying money. It's just such a rare thing. And I think the best explanation for that is because what do they run against? Incredibly well-funded campaigns that have super PACs that are funded by unknown dark money donors.
Okay, but if we look at someone like Nina Turner, who has lost every like campaign attempt in Ohio, right? Like she.
No, I'm not saying money equals winning. That's a different argument.
What are you saying then?
I'm saying that for a lot of these candidates, it would be political suicide in America's current political system to simply shirk their political interests for the sake of their of the constituency they want to appeal to.
Yeah,
Meaning
I mean, like
that taking money is necessary to get elected,
Yeah,
or
and this is particularly why I'm against saying like I'm for electoralism in the U.S.'s current voting system, because it just doesn't it simply won't represent the people's interests so long as this is the mechanic that dominates things, and I do think it really does dominate.
But it seems like the people's interest is being represented. If it was just money, or even if it was mostly
people's
hold on,
interest
really
most of the
quick,
time?
really quick. If you think that like money is like a major component in winning a
AOC
campaign,
thinks it is too. She literally says people come in to be progressive and they leave, or they wind up being people who only care about funding their own campaigns.
If money was like the number one or two reason that people get reelected, then why did Nina Turner not win either of her bids for I can't remember.
That's a straw man.
Wait, why is it a straw man? I'm directly asking. I'm asking.
Well, I mean, wait. I can answer this. It may have done with the fact that there were over 16 people on the ballot when she ran in 2021. It may even be 17 if I'm remembering correctly. And we've seen time and time again that larger bases of people that we vote for can sneak in certain politicians that might not be within our best interest. We saw this in the presidential election in what was it? It feels so far away, right? 2016?
2014.
Where,
sorry, can you repeat the last sentence? I had a TTS go off.
It's okay. Man, people should give me money. But give money to Freems because he sells amazing lotion and he's stuck in a state with Mansion. He's a cuck boy. And it's like really sucks because he will never support trans people because his daughter is big pharma. So it's really unfortunate that the trans folks in West Virginia will never get their mind centered, but it's very good that they at least be moisturized with lotion in the bag. The point that I was trying to make is that
what do those points have to do with?
Well, I mean, that wasn't a point. It's just that I'm trying to shill for Freem's loose lotion. But
oh, gotcha.
So Nina Turner, just so that we're clear, she lost by a little under 5,000 votes in 2021. But when we also look at the entire race, there were multiple people on the ballot running for that seat, and we've seen time and time again that the only people who benefit from large electoral bases, large bases of people to vote for, are extremists, literal fascists, and incumbents, and people who have the financial incentive to just maintain the status quo.
If extremists are like a big voting bloc, then why don't socialists get elected into the?
I'm not saying. Congress? Hold on, wait. Can you? I'm not gonna ask a question. I'm just gonna ask a question that I wanted to ask you earlier. So just so that I know, I want to see exactly where you're at, and then that's gonna help. I think a lot of people understand where to engage, and it might make Prime activate his moderator / debater arguer in his heart of hearts. So, what political party do you support?
Democrats.
Gotcha. So, what is more valuable for you as a Democrat? Voting for your values, regardless of party affiliation, or voting for someone within your political party that can win?
In the primaries, I would vote for someone that is closest to my values. If they didn't end up winning the primary, I would vote for the Democrats as basically a holding action for to put my values on hold rather than have them be pushed backwards in terms of progress.
How long would you put your values on hold?
As long as it takes, because if I see one party is apathetic towards, let's say one party is apathetic towards trans people and one is actively against trans people. Well, I would rather us like stay where we're at with with trans issues where we're at right now, rather than backslide into like actively like kicking down people's doors and detransing them, right?
Where we're at with trans issues right now depends on where you are, where you live, right?
Of course,
For-
but like
for
we're
some
also
people-
looking at like local and federal and
Right.
yeah.
So
for
just to
for some
be
people in some places where they live, any day could be a death sentence for them, or being horribly, violently beaten, you name it. So it looks very different from the perspective of someone who has to deal with those kinds of stressors on a daily basis, right?
Right, but even if we're going to take that, right? If we were to have a Democrat in those areas, it would be better to have a Democrat there than a Republican, because a Republican will start putting into law, crazy shit like Texas. I know this got struck down, but
Democrat, like
Texas had the.
a Democrat.
I'm
like
sorry, you're like clipping like a motherfucker. What?
Yeah, I think you're on the wrong mic, Jason.
it's because his microphone isn't moisturized with Freem's lotion. Right now it's very crackly, very ashy.
So if we were So
yeah, I just
if
want
we
to
were
ask Hansel a question.
So if we were to like look at the kinds of bills that Republicans are trying to put into law, like in Texas, where they literally said that trans affirming healthcare is child abuse, right? A Democratic, like the way the Democratic Party is right now, they're not going to put that sort of thing forward. Are they going to like put forward something that's like ultra pro-trans? Well, it kind of depends. Probably not in Texas, but are they going to do something that's like actively anti-trans? Probably not.
Yeah,
I guess
if I
so.
could
Two
ask a
things,
quick
and then
question.
I'll get. Can I?
Okay.
Because there's a close out, and then I'll let you play basketball. So just so I'm very clear here, I understand this might be the Sansel intervention hour for liberalism, and I really much enjoy this metamorphosis
Inshallah,
that we might
let's
go
go.
through. I enjoy the metamorphosis that we might go through, but I want to make sure I'm very clear here, so I'm not misrepresenting you. So you are willing to vote for Democrats who might not be encapsulate of your values as a placeholder for as long as it takes.
Yes, like if I'm looking at like the consequential like end result of what we're talking about here, right? It would be better for us to stay where we're at, where we have at least the option for trans people to go and get healthcare, right? Rather than backslide by allowing Republicans to get voted into office. Yes.
But you have a lot of
So
Democrats
then
that are acting as
to-
Republicans right now.
So
Like,
then, as the final
Okay,
follow-up,
can you
final
wait? Hold
follow-up.
on. I just want to ask Jason. Jason,
Sure.
can you point to me one Democratic representative right now who is pushing anti-trans legislation in the way that Republicans in Florida or in Texas or in any of these states that are run by red governments? Like
they don't have to. It's their passive disinvolvement that's the problem. Look at Henry Cuellar. He's a perfect example.
I just said, right? I would rather have like passive like doing nothing about what's going on right now, right?
And
like,
letting them continue to
What?
cause the problems and have
No,
somebody
they
that
could
does
only- hey,
nothing because
Jason,
the
did you
Republicans are
know-
continuing
hold
to
on.
perpetuate the issues.
Hold
right?
on, Jason, did you know that if Republicans lose elections to Democrats, then they can't put forward legislation?
But if we're not putting forward legislation to protect these people, then we're not doing anything.
Then we're not
either.
then we're not moving
Then we're
things
not
forward. We're
helping the
staying where we're
situation.
at.
But
I
staying
think
where we're at is not tenable.
I think Jason's
you have to move
sorry.
in a direction. Right?
Okay, so let's like
you
2 plus
can't-
2
you can't-
is moving
You can't
forward. Hold on,
elect
Jason.
people to do nothing. You
Okay,
can't
so
elect
Jason,
people to do
Jason.
nothing.
So
What
if
you're
we
saying
have
is,
like 2
I
plus
want
2,
somebody to
that's
do
like
nothing.
moving forward, right?
But guess
That
what? The
equals
public
4.
sentiment
But
is
if
going
we
to
have
change around those people, and they're going to lose votes. And then guess who's going to win? The Republicans are going to win, right? That's what's going to happen.
Well, listen,
Because
dude.
if they're
Listen, dude.
not-
I agree.
So
I
you
agree
can
with you.
respond to that.
So
I
what we
also
would do?
wanna let-
What we
oh,
would
so-
do?
so- so-
Yeah.
Sansa, I'm saying, Sansa, you can respond to that. I also
Yep.
want Ninetales to be able to get in a question to you. And Genevieve, I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to add, but I'll make space for you as well. So go ahead. Finish responding, Sansa.
Okay, so if we have, let's say, like right now we're at like number 2, okay, and electing a progressive would get us +1. Now we have 3 in favor of trans rights, right? But if we elect like a centrist Democrat, it's +0. Now we're just still at 2. If we elect a Republican, it's -2. So we go down to 0, right? So electing a Democrat who is apathetic towards these issues would keep us exactly where we're at, where at least there's still the option for trans people to go get healthcare in some way, shape, or form, right? while allowing a Republican to get voted into office would be actively moving us back. I would rather.
But here's the thing. Here's the
You can
thing.
still
People
vote for
are only
progressives.
going to put
You can
up
still
with
vote for
doing nothing
progressives.
for
You can
so
still-
long.
You can. Well,
People
that's
are only
why
gonna
I'm
put up
saying.
with doing
Well, listen,
nothing for
Jason,
so
I agree with you.
long.
I agree with you.
So
That's why we
eventually
should.
these
Well, Jason,
people
listen.
aren't
I'm not
gonna
saying
work,
that. I'm not saying that we
You're
should
gonna
only
end up with that Republican one way
I'm
or
not sa-
another.
Do you think that the end result is always going to be Republicans? Because if so, then why the fuck did you
Yes.
say that we are in favor, that you were in favor of electoralism? You're not in favor of electoralism. You want
I
a
absolutely
revolution.
am.
No,
I'm
no,
No,
I-
you're
I
not.
can
Because
see- I can
what
see the
I'm trying to say,
disagreement.
Jason, what
Your
I'm trying to say.
version
Wait,
of
I'm just.
electoralism.
This is the last
I
thing.
have to
Literally
vote
last
for
thing.
A or
Literally
B,
last thing.
And I can't
Oh,
fucking vote for a third party.
go
So
ahead.
This is what I'm
Fuck
saying.
off.
The last.
Tonsil,
Okay.
finish your point, then I want to go to Ninetales.
Okay. I'm not saying that you have to vote for a centrist Democrat. I'm saying that we have primaries so that we can elect people who are more progressive into the Democratic Party, because right now the Democratic Party has the actual option of being elected into office, right? The Green Party, the Libertarian Party, they're not going to do it, all right? You can elect more progressive Democrats so that we can move forward, right? But that's like, if we had the option between a centrist Democrat and a fucking Republican, vote for the centrist Democrat.
Okay,
So
let's go to. Sorry, we got to go to the
Yeah.
Ninetales.
Yeah,
End.
put me on the ball.
Genevieve, if you have anything you want to add, I'll give you that space, and we'll go back to our friend Black Guy. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Fucking
So, yeah.
blacks, am I right? Jesus.
First a point, then my
Complicated
question. First of all, I think it would be way stronger to actually disenfranchise people from the neoliberal nightmare we currently live in, and make them not want to vote Democrats, and make them want to vote Green Party, and better represent Green Party issues. But for Sanso, going back to our very fractured debate about whether or not these parties are represent the interests of the voters, my biggest question to you, and I think the number reflects the way that you think, so I'm just curious, I'm not going to follow up or anything. What percentage of people running for office would you say are populists running on no corporate donors?
Probably very, 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 very low. Like in the 10-20% at like
10
the
to
max.
20?
Like if we're talking about like local
Ooh,
elections and
boy.
state elections and federal, I'm gonna say, like, if I'm being like ultra generous, yeah, I'd say like 10 to 20%, but it's probably lower than that, yeah. But that's why, like, hey, guess what? If you want those kinds of people to run and get elected, you have to fucking vote for them, right?
I
It's
would
not-
agree.
Yeah. Yeah,
100%
so that's what I'm saying.
in this case, the
Like,
left should
vote
be getting
for-
getting people to vote for that.
Go
So.
to the polls during the primaries. You can vote for those people. If they don't end up making it to the the end of it, right? Fuck, I'm losing the word because I'm arguing with like 5 people. But like, if they don't make it to the general election, well then fuck. Are you going to vote for someone who's going to at least maintain like the ship where it's sailing right now, or are you going to vote for someone who's going to like go like hard to the right and like actively be against trans people?
So let's. I guess are you going to respond, Ninetales, or?
She said
Yeah.
she wasn't. Or
Yeah,
if you want
okay.
to, you can. I
Okay.
just thought she said she wasn't going to.
Okay. All right, then let's
Well,
go to.
I mean, if Madame Genevieve does want to go, she can totally start talking right now, and I'll.
If
shut
you
up.
have a quick response to what he just said, go for it.
Okay,
And
yeah.
and then I'll go after you.
Yeah, it'll just be a quick response. My problem with your solution for taking no steps forward is that does eventually lead to issues that the left that become out of control for the left, such as not having a voting system which represents the people.
Okay, do you think that I'm advocating for voting for people who aren't going to move us forward?
No.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let's go to Genevieve.
Thanks. I think Santo's making some really good points here. I think that, again, we have the chance to really express our beliefs in a more nuanced way in the primaries, but when it comes down to the general election and really a two-party decision, choosing the lesser of two evils seems like it's always going to be better than choosing the greater evil. And I guess I'm just sort of confused, Joe, as to what you think not voting is adding. How is that helping the situation, or what are you hoping to accomplish by sitting out the vote?
I think that if you do not believe that a candidate on a ballot is going to be representative of your values, I totally understand why you would make the decision to not vote. Now, the thing, or I guess the theme that I'm feeling, right? I'm just vibe checking. Okay, it's vibe checking, is that type of political action is unacceptable for some people. That regardless of who is on the ballot, that you ought to go out and exercise this. And to an extent, I am not fully on the side of it, but I would say something I would support is the expansion of people's ability to participate in the process without participating. So that looks like the idea of like voting for no one. I'm closer to supporting that, like the idea of like writing no one, or the ability of sending even something as simple as saying, by sending back this ballot blank, you therefore are choosing neither candidate. Or like by just like hitting enter on the ballot, you're choosing not to vote for either candidate. I'm closer to that.
Voter in
than-
present.
How many?
Feels a little bit
What
more-
percentage?
Can I-
What percentage of the values
Can I-
do they have to line up with you for you to be okay with voting?
Let,
for
let,
them?
let Genevieve respond.
I can answer that. That's
Answer
a
that
really
quickly,
No
but
one's
after
ever going to
that-
line up with 100% of
Okay,
what you believe
guys,
in, unless you're running.
hey, we gotta get some more here, right? So you can answer that quickly, Joe, but I do want to get Genevieve. She's been waiting very patiently.
Why is that? I'm going to ask you with a question. I want you to be as honest as you can with me. Why is that question important to you, that you felt the need to feel so strongly charged about asking it?
Me or Genevieve?
To you, Council. You reacted very like aggressively towards the
Yes,
idea that
okay.
was positive.
I
So
don't
where does
wanna-
that come from?
Sure,
Why
I
does that
want to
bother you?
answer this, but I don't want to like step on Genevieve's toes because I think she also asked you a question.
Listen,
my
I
by
kind of
the
already
look
did
at- by the
step on
look
my
of
toes when
Genevieve-
you spoke
listen.
over me the first time, Sansel. So if you want
Yikes.
to go ahead and finish your point, then I'll circle back. Because
Sorry, I
by the looks
apologize.
of Genevieve's, let's
Yeah.
be clear, by the looks of Genevieve's backdrop, I'm not making any judgments due to what I see to the left of your screen, but go off, Queen. So maybe that's something she might enjoy. I don't know. I'm just saying. All right, let's keep going.
Okay. So the reason I asked this because you keep on talking about people voting their values, right? But no candidate is going to be 100% in line with your values except for you, right? Unless you like find like the perfect candidate. So like what percentage of it does it need to be is why I asked that question. I think that generally speaking, even like socialists would be more in line with what Democrats want, at least on a social level, than with Republicans. So.
Sure. Well, it's gonna matter from policy to policy, right? Like, for instance,
No, but I mean like in totality.
No, I don't think people are thinking in totality when they're voting for something. They have certain things that they feel very strongly about, and there's certain things that they don't feel very strongly about. So, and for some people, the bridge might be cannabis. For others, the bridge might be actual trans acceptance, like the expansion of healthcare, the expansion of counseling services in public schools. For another person, it might be guns. Like the window of tolerance for individuals is going to vary from topic to topic. And for some people, they have a very small window of tolerance for people who do not support these particular policies. That could be through the direct like adversion of saying, I'm not voting for this at all, fuck the blacks. But it might be something a bit more elusive or passive, where like, I'm not going to say fuck the blacks, but I'm not going to introduce any type of policy that's going to actually push Black Americans forward, like in different levels of economic status or social status. Like those two things and the things I'm describing like exist. Like the window of tolerance is going to navigate differently, and also for politicians, their window of tolerance and their window of openness towards topics also has that type of bubble, unless you disagree with that.
I think that what we have to look at, or something that we have to contend with, is the fact that, number one, a candidate is also going to be voting along party lines a lot of the time, right? They're going to be like, if their like big thing is they are pro-trans, they're also going to be voting along party lines or whoever they caucus with on economic issues, right?
So that's Ilhan Omar, but yeah, keep going.
Well, I mean,
I mean, just saying,
not on every
if we're
single
gonna be honest.
issue, not on every single thing, but
There
like
we-
generally
there we-
speaking,
there's-
not
there's-
generally speaking, like we're going to be seeing people who don't know enough about like a specific topic, so they defer to what their party would say to vote for to get through their initiatives that they've laid out. So like those sorts of things are something that you need to take into consideration, because all of these politicians aren't islands, right? They're part of a broader political party that is going to be like in favor of like a certain set of policies. Now, by voting in more progressive people in the Democratic Party, we can move the Democratic Party further to the left, right? And then we can see those things be part of like the broader Democratic agenda, right? We can see great strides in how far we've moved the Democrats left over the past like 4 to 6 years. Look at the kinds of things that the Democrats have adopted since Bernie started running, and since AOC got elected, since Ilhan Omar and the Squad and all of them. They've adopted the $15 minimum wage as part of their party platform. They've adopted, at least a public option as part of their platform, or at least some kind of like healthcare reform.
It
These
feels
are
like
sorts of
the
things.
Squad, though, has honestly been rejected by the Democratic Party more than it's been accepted.
How could they be rejected when the policies that they got elected on are now part of like the broader Democratic like agenda?
So I don't think it's, I don't necessarily think it's productive to like go down this road, because politicians for the AOCs of the world, like the new representatives, they're not pushing policies forward. Like, let's make this like as clear as we possibly can. They're not pushing policies forward. I can clarify this statement, right? How many policies and bills has AOC introduced since she's gotten elected?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm talking about the broader Democratic agenda.
Sure,
right?
and I can answer that for you. The introduction of policies for new congressional members and new Senate members is very, very uncommon. So for a lot of them, they're going to have to cater to whatever the party platform is, because Democrats have a party platform, Republicans have a party platform. If those things don't exist within the policy, like their platform, the party platform, it's going to be very difficult for them to make any type of shake in the system, because they're just going to get hit with either overt obstruction, like not being on certain committees, not getting tapped for certain positions on committees that might have them lead to coming to the things that they want to advocate for.
But we can directly point towards the fact that these people are on committees. Number one, it's not like the Squad is completely like rejected by the Democratic Party. They're not on any committees. They haven't changed the party platform. We can directly look at the policies that are more in line with progressive policies, $15 minimum wage, shit like that. We can look at the acceptance of gay rights and the gay movement, LGBT movement. Within the Democratic Party as a really big one. People didn't vote for Obama in 2008 because he was going to save the gays. But at the end of the day, the right for gay marriage and a lot of the rights that gay people have now are as a result of Democrats being elected in 2008 and 2012. We can look at the election of people in 2018 as pushing the party further left. The only way for these policies and the broader agenda of these political parties to move further left or further right is for people to elect people who are further left or further right. That's how their agendas are set, by having people within the party vote on what the party platform is going to be. And if there are more progressives in office, then there's going to be a more progressive Democratic platform, right?
I have 2 points, and then
I'll shut up because I've been
and then
speaking.
Genevieve has been waiting for.
Yeah, I think that the idea that LGBTQIA plus individuals are seen in representation is bordering Dungeons and Dragons, because if that were not the case, if it were the case that the conditions of these individuals is, and Democrats can take that as a victory, then we would have seen the passage of the Equality Act years ago to this point, and we still haven't had that passed. So I don't think Democrats are the shining example of people that we can say like, oh, these things are because of them. Like, yeah, they recognize that minorities and disenfranchised people exist, but when it comes to when the rubber hits the road of policies, then they're pretty much very, very much like 1 + 1 = 0. And for you laid out that that's okay, that you're totally okay with the equation equaling 0, as long as there is a potential hope of it leading to +1. So that was what you mentioned.
Where did the Equality Act fail?
That's a complicated question.
It failed in the Senate, where there aren't a lot of elected progressives.
Why does elected progressives matter if Democrats take the L?
Because the only reason they took L is because they didn't have more senators. Why? Like, well, how do you not understand?
So who's at fault for that? Is it Democrats that's fault for that, or is it progressive that's at fault for that?
I'm not saying that the Democrats are at fault for that, right? I'm saying that we need more Democrats or progressives elected into Senate.
Yeah. Genevieve Vinzonia, please.
Yeah.
This is actually going back a little bit because obviously there was your dialogue there, but I did want to redirect a little bit to the idea of either not voting for either of the major two-party candidates in the presidential election. The idea of that being maybe something that's more comfortable to you, or writing, none of the above in there. I would say that obviously, I would ask, would you acknowledge that there's still tremendous value in going to the polls or filling out your ballot, even if there's that one question that you might disagree with? There's still all of the other measures and other things that you're getting to vote on. So there's still inherent value in encouraging people to go out and vote when it's election day, even if perhaps they really feel they morally can't vote for either of the two main candidates.
Was that to me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
let me start. My presence is very real in this panel. I'll try to make this as short as I can. I think one of the problems is with electoralism kind of broadly, and this is kind of like where I'm sort of in the middle of terms of like non-voting and the idea of no vote, right? The idea that I could propose of saying no answer on the ballot question, right? Something that I do think is interesting is that we use ballot measures during specific election cycles as a means to getting people to the polls in the first place. If I believe that a overwhelming majority of New Jerseyans don't vote during primaries, then why are we putting these sort of questions that will directly change their lives on ballot questions in situations where they're not going to show up anyway, where there are things that individuals support, and those ballot questions will lead to those changes. Like, we got the expansion of sports betting. To be clear, we got expansion of sports betting also due to the Supreme Court making their decision to expand that. Look no further than Governor Murphy v. I forget the company he represented, because Christie started it. But I guess what I'm going to say to kind of round that out, because I don't want to meander too far on this, is that I think that ballot questions are things that people ought to pay attention to. But I think in the current electoral system that we live under, those questions kind of get sort of thrown into the wind, where they're not representative of the constituents or even the electorates that might vote for that. So I don't know how you can.
Is the better option just to sit it out and not express your opinion then at all?
No, I think the better option would be trying to communicate to your I'm just going to use a term that people might understand and not get too like sort of politically fancy about it, but like your local municipalities, and say like, hey, we understand that voter turnout for primaries is incredibly low across the United States. So why are we putting ballot questions that could change the lives of members of our state tomorrow when we understand that might not have the proper representation and proper turnout? Now, within the current system, that would then require, okay, why don't we push it over to the general? But I think that we need to reimagine how voting works altogether, where it's maybe an ongoing process as opposed to something that we just vote for every 2 years, where if a ballot question has the ability for people to vote on right away, then they should be able to vote on that as soon as possible. Like, for example, whether it be the expansion of sports betting to marijuana to guns, like if there's something that like people could like be strongly in favor for, then they should be able to vote for that without waiting every 2 years or every 1 year, depending on how it looks like. I don't know if that answered that question fully. I'm sorry.
It kind of does, but then it also sort of feels like the argument of I don't like the system, so I'm just not going to participate at all. And I think that's really kind of a damaging mindset, because you can disagree with something and think that there's room for improvement, but the only way to really get your point heard to the masses and have a position to be able to change anything is kind of to play the game and then to make changes from within it.
I mean, sure, because on one hand, like, what did Martin Luther King get? He got a bullet, a street, and a couple schools named after him. Like, what did Fred Hampton get? A bullet, a couple streets, and maybe a couple schools and scholarships in his honor. What did Malcolm X get? A bullet, a street, and a couple. So like, it seems to be that like
MLK like get the Civil Rights Act passed.
We're not gonna. That was really stupid. Holy fuck!
What are you talking about?
Well,
that's a situation where we might get stun locked. But the point is that, and the frustration that I have, right, is okay. If I believe that Martin Luther King was the key proponent for the passing of the Civil Rights Act, then why hasn't there been more legislation to expand the rights of citizens without having to go all the way back to the 60s to say this was the biggest point? Like, why hasn't the Equality Act passed? Why haven't we expanded the protections for racially identifiable groups so that you don't run into loopholes and have to have sort of bandage policies like affirmative action? Like, if we believe, like, that still makes my statement true, where even if I were to believe that Martin Luther King was the leading charge of the person who passed the Civil Rights Act, that doesn't to ignore my frustration, and that I'd love to have the expansion of civil rights without having to go back to the fucking 60s and 70s to when it was actually like put in fruition. Because these things clearly, if we see that the Civil Rights Act has been stripped every single time in the United States by Republicans, the Voting Rights Act has been stripped by Supreme Court decisions, it's very clear that these things are kind of old and they need to be revised and reimagined. But it seems time and time again, like LBJ recognized, if we look at his war on poverty, even if you want to look back to the PRARA, the Work Responsibility Act in the 90s, Bill Clinton said explicitly, if there isn't a continuation of policies beyond this act, then this bill is a failure. So we can look and say that bill that Clinton signed was a failure. If we do the same argument for LBJ, where paraphrasing that this is just the first step for additional legislation, and what did he choose to do? He chose not to run. And who did we get after that? Nixon. So we see that there needs to be a continuation of policy in order for things to change in the United States. But it seems that time and time again, that when we see the very clear fact that certain policies don't get picked up by Democrats or there's a continuation, we don't see that Democratic leadership has a continuation of policies going across candidates, then I understand the frustration of somebody getting dissatisfied with 1 + 1 = 0. And again, Sanso, like, you laid out very clearly that you're okay with it equaling 0 as long as there's some type of idea for it to be +1. So, and you said like you're willing to do it for as long as it takes. So the question I have for you is, what do you say, or how do you navigate with individuals who are tired of 1 + 1 = 0?
I got it. Sorry, I gotta get some other people in here.
I'll defer
Sonia
to them.
and then Ninetales.
So I think there's so much that's happened, and there are multiple things I want to comment on, and so much time has passed since I wanted to comment. I'm going to narrow it down to just a couple things. I think one thing that's being missed by both Genevieve and Sansol about what Joe is saying is Joe is trying to say that he understands why people would not vote, why they would not be motivated to cast a vote, right? And multiple times he's kind of qualified that, saying, we should work within the system, but I understand why some people see it as something that there isn't a good option, and so they don't cast a vote. And I think that's the important thing that gets missed in our electoral politics, is that there's too much willingness to just go and demonize those who don't cast a vote or who vote for a third party, instead of trying to understand why it is that they don't vote and adjusting their policies and their prescriptions and their representation to motivate and capture those who who would normally abstain, right? And that's what a lot of this is about, is understanding why it is that somebody didn't vote, why it is that a lot of people in particular marginalized groups oftentimes won't vote. And that seems to be where you guys are kind of missing oftentimes. Now, something else I wanted to comment on was I think what's most important, because our national electoral politics are such a end game kind of goal. There's not a lot of ability to motivate a major paradigm shift in our national electoral politics. But grassroots work to change and modify the electorate at the local level is very valuable and is much more malleable. Not intending the rhyme there, but it's much more malleable because of the fact that you can actually interact with people directly, and there's a connection, there's an interest, there is a dependency on those people. Like when I go to my city council, when I go to like town council and city council meetings, and I go and hang out there, and then I start talking, they get to know me. And as I pull them aside and start to talk to them about things that I feel are concerning me, next thing I know, the more that I do that, later on, those people are suddenly talking about things that I had brought to them, right? And then of course getting yourself involved in local politics. Now again, this kind of gets difficult when it comes to, like, for instance, you get like LGBT people who are in a very conservative area. You're born to conservative family in a conservative area, makes it a lot harder to make those kinds of movements. But it's still a better option to go with your local politics and try and move the needle there and provide more and more motivation on the ground there, because that over time will shift the national electorate, and that will also introduce things like, for instance, AOC and others championing ranked choice voting in New York. That happened. So that's another thing. You can motivate those kinds of changes first on your local city level, and then on the county, and then on the state, right? It's slow, it's a slog, but it's much more likely to get you your representation and to eventually over time change the face of the national electorate. But I still think that going back to what I originally said, demonizing those who would choose to vote third party or abstain is simply just dismissing why it is that they're not voting in the first place, instead of adjusting and accounting for the reasons that they don't see an option for themselves, and adjusting your policy and representation to better match them.
Can I respond?
Sorry, I didn't. I was muted. Sorry. You're gonna respond, Genevieve? Okay, then we'll go.
Yeah, just quickly. I know Ninetales wants to speak as well, but I do want to clarify. I don't advocate for or support the idea of shaming people who choose not to vote. I do think it is really important to listen to why. And as I've been listening to Joe, the reason that he's presented as why people might be choosing not to vote, at least the main reason that's being presented from him, correct me if I'm wrong, seems to be that they feel they're not a person who chooses not to vote for either of the two-party candidates might feel that they're not being well represented by either of those two. Is that accurate to the reason that you kind of expressed why somebody wouldn't want to vote?
Sure. And then my prescription would be, I think people should feel free to vote for whoever they want, regardless of their political affiliation in their party. I still think that's participation in the process, and we ought to recognize that as something of value.
Yeah, I think participation in the process is super important. And I think that kind of goes back to, I would never want to shame somebody for whatever their reason might be or whatever their choice would be, but I would want to encourage them to think about the consequences of their inaction and the potential consequences of if they did take action instead, what that could look like conversely, and to kind of walk through that thought process. Because simply, to me, saying I don't feel represented by either of these, so therefore I'm just not going to speak on it, that doesn't feel effective to me. That feels like an excuse. I think that it would be more valid to still speak up and then continue to speak on the fact that maybe the system itself is flawed in the way that we are able to express our votes.
Yeah, so some points on this that I've accumulated and collected and gleaned. I feel like the left actually does a disservice to voters by caring a bit too much about federal elections. Basically, like, it's probably easy to let go of these issues when you know that you don't want to cover things from all over the place and get lost in that. But I think as the left, we should do better at finding content creators who do go through this stuff and who do make content to help people navigate it, so that even like as a Canadian, even if I'm here in Ontario, if I really like a content creator who produces stuff that informs voters in BC at like the local and provincial level, that we should definitely value that. And I would extend that personally to US politics, because I don't see, like, I think Canada's just the US policy wise with some lag and some also some ahead of the curve stuff. It's very weird that way. But yeah, so in general, we could focus way better if we didn't just focus on federal elections. Another problem is that we have to remedy the problem. Well, ideally, we would have to remedy the problem that most people do not like politicians. But we don't remedy it by saying, hey, you know what? You should actually just vote for them anyways. I think that's really disenfranchising for people, especially like workers, and considering the material conditions that they don't have a lot of time to take in the whole platforms of every single candidate. We should be focusing more on the minutia than making broad sweeping statements that essentialize all the voters who just don't vote. And then final point, we should be supporting, and again, especially on the left, I actually think the right does a better job of this from the top down than most would expect. But we should be supporting crowdfunded campaigns and doing ground action to bring people to the polls, or even their votes to the polls. So I know there's a lot of stuff like this being done. If you're a leftist and you want to make a difference with electoral politics, if you're already a content creator who's well established, great, do that. But if you're not already there, I would say the best thing you can do is help with some actual action, help with campaigns that you want to support, and most importantly, raise awareness for campaigns that are raising funds through anything but corporate donors.
Oh no, Nine Tails, I'm going to push back a little bit. No!
I'm scared.
So the frustration I have is the lack of competitiveness within politics, and we have this illusion that it's actually competitive. I'll give you a really sort of, I guess, simple example, right? New Jersey is gerrymandered to shit to favor Democrats explicitly at the federal level. It is explicit gerrymandering in the support of Democrats, so much so that they have a majority of 10-2. So a politician who is a Republican, their vote in New Jersey is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. They're going to lose to Republicans, save 2 districts. Now, the frustration I have is that we see this lack of competitiveness when we go down and look even at like the primaries right now. So for example, in District 10, Thomas, Jesus, another cool guy, but Donald Payne had, I think, almost 30,000 votes in his district towards his running for the primaries. And if you look at the Republican candidate, they only had 3,000 people show up at the polls. So people will see that 80% of David Pinkney won by 80% of the vote for the Republican primary. but it doesn't matter. He's going to get ass blasted by Donald Payne. I don't think that's okay. I don't think that's okay, regardless if that's Republican or Democrat. And I know that for a lot of people who are liberal, they might get uncomfortable in me maybe saying this, is that I think that Republicans need to be able to be competitive in such a way where they're actually competing in these races, and that these races are not just like in a vote into an eventuality of just more doomerism, because it's seen, and this can happen in so many different ways, right? Like we can see it in District 7 with Tom Malinsky, who's a Democrat. He won with almost 95% of the vote. And as much as I love Roger Bacon, he's a cool guy. He's not beating him. He's an incumbent Democrat in District 7 in New Jersey. And then I look at Susan Killey, who's in District 6. She was up against Rick Mehta, and Rick Mehta was running for governor in New Jersey on the Republican side, and he got ass blasted by Jack Ciattarelli. And then when he ran for the House seat, he got ass blasted by Susan Killey, where it's
I think I see the point that you're making.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Like I don't disagree with you. The problem for me here is kind of like the communication barrier for people who are actually trying to advocate for things like capitalism bad and stuff like that. Like if I have an audience saying hate capitalism, and I'm saying, oh, also vote for this person who, you know, takes corporate donors because, you know, because they're just more strategic. I can understand. Now, I also totally agree with everything you said with competitiveness, but I can understand why there's suddenly a gap there, and why when you said something like, and you know, in New Jersey, Republicans always win. You said something more. Sorry if I got that wrong. I'm not.
Oh yeah. So to be
I'm
clear,
not trying to straw man you.
Yeah. So to be clear, and
can I just
like
quickly make my point?
Go for it, and I'll
finish.
Absolutely.
Because I think people cut off there when they do. I guess I did too.
Yes.
People cut off there, and they're like, well, now it feels like I have no control. So how do we give people a sense of control in these things when they're also feeling like they're giving up their values?
Yeah, I'm closer to the position that it might be easier to advocate for it. There's so much with it, right? Like there's getting people more politically educated, so that's going to start in the school system. I know Democrats and Republicans alike are not for that, of the expansion of civic education in public schools. So that's a hurdle in of itself. I think another hurdle is the advocacy for things that might represent your constituents better, like ranked choice voting, where we see it in, like, for example, like we see it in a nonpartisan fashion, where it appears like when we're trying to elect our school board members and we say, pick your 2 favorite candidates, and then that's totally okay. Or we see it at the council level of pick your 2 favorite candidates. That's totally okay in a nonpartisan fashion. But then the minute we start getting to sort of levels of partisanship, then people get a little like wiggly. Because I would say, and this might be to your point, that like, listen, like, I don't know if anybody needs to hear this and might be like miraculously endeviled in this position. Fuck Bob Menendez, but not Bob Menendez is one of the most crooked senators to come from my fucking state. And you know who is running now and on the ballot for District 8? His son. So I fuck his son. Fuck Bob Menendez. It's like, how am I so like, and what sucks about that is because there are progressive candidates who are on that ticket, and then they got ass blasted because Bob Menendez has the id pull power to galvanize voters. But it's like, for fuck's sake, he's like so pro pharma, it hurts. And like, is one of the reasons why we have a monopoly in our state in terms of healthcare. But then at the same, and this might be just your point, where it's like, I sympathize to people in District 8 of my state because Bob Menendez does not represent people in District 8, but there are people who are more than willing to say, I'm going to vote for Bob Menendez for the hope that we're going to get a progressive candidate down the line, despite the fact that there are progressive candidates on the ballot and they just don't get voted for. Where there's like, so it's like, that's like, and that's another whole thing. But yeah, I think we're closer aligned than apart on this. Maybe.
Okay, can I bring
and
up
just
a
to bolster your
hypothetical?
point super quick, we said something about ranked choice voting, and when I was trying to talk about solutions, I've actually forgot to mention that. I do think that like up until like the right wing, this is like the best like big tent way for the left and Dems to actually get people to vote. If things were more open this way, and like for me, the important thing though is like I'm so against shaming that like I'd rather we like talk about the material conditions in the system than focus so much on the individual voter. And I feel like we're kind of overdoing that. So that's why for me, like I wish there was an easier way to just say to them, like, here's the better option. But if for some reason we're failing at that, and I wish it was.
Yeah, you have to convince people. Can I bring up an example of something and see what you guys would say to this? So let's say that you are part of a construction team, okay? And you live in a town where there is consistent flooding issues, right? There's this giant wall. They built a great, glorious wall that keeps all the floodwaters back. And it needs constant repairs, and it's made out of concrete. But someone has discovered a new material, right? That if you make the barrier out of that new material, then it'll be much stronger, much safer, and many fewer people will die as a result of like the yearly floods, right? Now, not everyone is on board with trying to use this experimental material because they don't know if it's going to work. They don't know if it's cost effective. But you know, it is there, right? There's you and a couple of other people that want to use this this material. Now, would you say that if a certain group of those people wanted to split off, right, and go and make their own construction company where they 100% like divert all of their attention into trying to use this new material on the barrier, right? Like, it's going to divert attention away from repairing and upkeeping the barrier, right? If they split off, would you be okay with those people splitting off and trying to do their own thing? Or would you say that everyone needs to stick together and maintain the course until you can convince enough of the company to try and use the new material?
Ooh,
So
boy,
you're
I
saying
really wanna
do
answer
what
this.
America has
Please,
done
please.
for
Joe?
decades.
Well, I'm
So,
asking you,
Nine
yes.
Tails,
Which
Nine
one?
Tails,
Which
Nine
one would
Tails.
you be?
Nine Tails.
I'm actually gonna piss, but let Nine Tails go. Let's go.
Thank you. So this is actually part of my theory of experimentalism. And it's why when I said to you that after a while of voting for no step forward, we really don't get anywhere. So there are probably a lot of instances, maybe more in the like political sense than the infrastructure sense, but I could be wrong, where we actually do need to bring in these experimental things more than we do. And I think it's a feature of neoliberal capitalism that these things never change, that we take them for granted. And even when they prove themselves to be failed hypotheses, we continue with them as if, you know, anything else would be absolute chaos. Although this system does a very good job at containing its chaos, I'll agree with that. My particular thing is, yes, we should. In general,
Yes, we should do what? Which one of the two options?
the experimental approach where you diverge off. Now, this is where I'm saying things get sticky, where I said before, I would also then advocate for more electoralism, where we do try harder to have a system that respects that. And
Okay,
we
but
already
in this
see
hypothetical,
that we have systems that...
listen,
Yeah, it
in
is
this hypothetical, if people
Wasn't your
split
question
off, then-
hypothetical?
right? I'm saying in the lore of this hypothetical, if you split off, then you're diverting a very like minute or a very specific number of people that are needed to upkeep the barrier, right?
Yeah.
If you split those people, then very likely there's going to be more people that die, or even like there's going to be like a catastrophic number of people that are going to die.
Okay,
because
that's
you've
a
split
bunch
the
of
resources.
neoliberal assumptions I don't want to get into. The big thing for me
Wait, what do you mean
was...
neoliberal assumptions? This is a hypothetical.
You were saying a bunch of people are going to die because they start voting in a different
I'm saying
way.
if you know that this is going to happen.
If I know that they're going to die,
Yes.
then it depends on what the experiment is supposed to be. Is the experiment supposed to be nobody dies, and this is, you know, the neoliberal
The experimental material.
dream? Like, people
that
die
you're going
under
to
this
use-
electoral system, so I don't know if like comparing it that way makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so if you had a system where 100 people a year die of flooding, right, versus, you know, everybody in this hypothetical town dying because we've split the construction crews too much. You would rather like go for splitting everybody into their like individual groups rather than try to convince people within the construction company that you're working in to all use the new like hardcore adamantium, stronger than steel building material.
Like, if we're talking about forming new societies, then it gets complicated. If we're talking about having a new political party, then I think it makes a lot more sense. Like, in general, like, the thing for me is that you're never going to be able to fully separate yourself from any of this. Like I said, even if we do say, quote, form a new society, which is how I originally wanted to address this, then, like, we're still going to have to work within the systems. That way, that system just doesn't completely destroy people. Personally, like, I just want to, I'm not going to bring, I want a spot later on in the panel to say something, but it's going to be a change in pace. I know a lot of people want to talk,
for me, I feel like if we were to compare the dam to being like trans issues, right? And we could either bolster trans issues, keep trans issues where they are, or divert our attention to two different groups, right? Where we will definitely have trans issues be regressed or to where way more trans people are dying, right? Yes, right now there are going to be trans people that die under the current system, but under the hypothetical that you just bit the bullet on for some reason, way more trans people are going to die.
No, so look, like, here's a problem, and I want to say this.
Can I please come in on this?
Focused
okay,
on,
sorry.
Hold on, you guys were really focusing on trans issues, but like, here's a better example: abortion.
It's a big issue right now.
Yeah.
Abortion. Yeah, with all the
abortion is
also,
So I did have a
One second. Hold on.
Yeah, there's Dems doing nothing.
Hold on. Thanks. Abortion. We have a situation where Democrats, right, specifically Nancy Pelosi, have been campaigning for anti-abortion people in her party, like Cuellar, I believe in New Jersey, is anti-abortion. He had a opponent, Jessica Cisneros, who was not anti-abortion, was very pro-choice. But it's not as if that like electing individuals in the Democratic Party equals progress or equals like static, right?
Exactly.
Like, it can be regression. And a voter can look at this intelligently, look at the options, saying, why, if pro-choice, if abortion is something that is absolutely important to them, they can look at the option between Cuellar and a Republican and say, I accomplished nothing here. This party does not care about me. I've seen in a moment where Nancy Pelosi goes off and says, well, the Democratic Party will be there to fight for women in this time of transition. If, the Supreme Court ruling comes down, as we think it's going to come down, right? We're going to be there to fight for women. And then immediately goes out and helps a anti-abortion colleague. Then, I think it's not irrational for a voter in that state to say, absolutely not. I'm not supporting this.
Okay, so
I
can I follow up
wanted to
after
mention
Joe?
too.
I wanted to-
Claire is also
just a
big
quick
2A
response.
guy.
Yeah, can I be on the docket? Because I do want to engage with Gonzo's
the example you
hypothetical.
brought up.
Okay.
The really funny thing about the example you brought up is that he won by like what, less than 1,000 votes.
And he
About
won.
100
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
He's 100 and something.
Yeah, and so if you guys were able to get more people to go out and fucking vote rather than vote third party or just withhold their vote for some principled, like, I don't like the Democratic Party,
Well,
then you would have
hold
someone
on,
that
sorry,
was-
hold on.
Who the fuck
If
is you
Nancy
guys here?
Pelosi, if Nancy
The
Pelosi
people that are
hadn't gone and
advocating that says
supported
it's-
Henry Cuellar,
So-
if people like Jim Clyburn hadn't gone and supported Henry Cuellar, those votes would have gone to Jessica Cisneros because
Raymond.
people
You
will
don't
still be
hold
beholden
on.
to the
You don't
Democratic-
fucking know
the
that. Number
Democratic
one.
establishment.
Number two,
Are you
even
going to
if
tell me that doesn't sway votes? That the people in power in these parties don't sway votes in those areas, in those districts? You're out of your fucking mind. What are
Okay, do you think
fucking
that? Do you
talking
think that
about? Why do
telling
you think
people
they have other
Oh,
people go campaign for them?
you can soy out and scream into your microphone all you want, Jason, but it doesn't change the fact that if people weren't out here advocating for people to just vote their values, and if their values are like fuck the Democrats, and if they don't go out and fucking vote for like fucking more progressive people in the primaries, then you're not going to get the pro-choice candidate. You're going to get the pro-life people. Okay.
Right, because you have an
Assuming there
entire
is a
Democratic
pro-choice
Party that's
candidate.
behind
You're
the
sitting
guy
here
advocating
saying
the wrong shit.
he won,
Of course, people
but with
feel
less than
unheard.
1,000 vote margin.
It doesn't fucking matter.
I
It
really
does
like
matter
to
because
engage.
he
And it
won
ended
by
up
the
that way
slimmest.
because
I
he
still have
had
a
the
very
weight
quick
behind
response.
him.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
so-
All right, sorry, hold on. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do, right? We got it. We're gonna go to Zonia for your quick response. Sorry, not Zonia, excuse me. Nine Tails, your quick response. I apologize. And then we'll go to Genevieve, and then Joe,
Okay,
Also,
so really
me
quick.
after that, please.
and then actual Zonia. Okay.
Okay, so really quick, and if you want to respond, so I'll just keep. I just won't respond. But I am hearing what you're saying as more of a question of options versus less options, or sorry, more options versus less options. I am for more options, simply put, especially more so as we get into a direct democracy. But until then, I think like we should stop telling people that voting for change is just 100% effective, just something you should do.
Do you
First
think
of all,
that if
there
1,000
are many other
people
ways.
voted
Hold on.
for, sorry,
Hold on, 1 second.
There-
Sansal, hold your response. I gotta
I'm
get some other
done.
people
Yeah,
in,
go
and
for
you
it.
can respond to it later. Go ahead, Nine Tails. Finish your point.
There are many other ways for the left to try to get change. We're smarter than just stopping there. But more importantly, like if we're going to talk about this and be real, there's a certain efficacy to voting. It's like if you want to say it's 50% for most issues, fine. But I think the more radical left you get with issues, the more progressive you get, that efficacy drops exponentially.
Okay, let's go to Genevieve, then Joe, and then Zonia.
I just wanted to kind of react to your mention of abortion rights, obviously with the Roe v. Wade stuff that's going on right now. I think that further supports my argument that even if you don't completely agree with a specific candidate, that voting for the party that more closely aligns with your values is ultimately going to have a positive effect on you. And I would say because that's what's ultimately, whoever of those two parties, whoever is elected president is going to be in charge of appointing our Supreme Court justices, as we saw with Trump appointing multiple justices who now are leaning the court in this much more conservative direction, whether or not people were a big fan of Hillary Clinton or the other Democratic options. It still would have protected the rights that people on the left do advocate for. And I think if we bring this full circle back to the original tweet, it did specifically call out people who identify as being leftist. And I think that if you're going to support those values or claim to, if you want to benefit from them, then you need to have your actions support what your beliefs are.
But okay, that's then okay. So we'll vote for a president, but why vote for a Cuellar?
I'm sorry.
You can vote for president then, okay? If you're saying that the ultimate thing is the Supreme Court, right? Well, then vote for the president. Why vote for Cuellar? Who will, if he's in office and if he's in the Senate, then he's going to be pushing for judges who are anti-abortion. He's actively working against you. And when it comes to abortion legislation, him and a few other corporate and conservative Democrats who are in office will actively be stymieing those things. So, okay, vote for the president who's on the presidential ticket, but why vote for Cuellar?
I think that there maybe is a different strategy in my mind when we're looking at the general presidential election versus elections that are going to be on the state level or like a local level. I think that individual votes can have more impact on us if it's not the national presidential election. And so if you did truly want to vote your conscience and it was outside of your party, at that level, then I think that your vote has a better chance of having the impact that you would intend for it. I think on a presidential level, sometimes we need to just go with the person who is ultimately going to be the most aligned with us, even if we don't fully agree with them.
What about effectiveness though, as well? Like, so we voted in Democrats. We had a Democratic president previously, in Obama, right? Who didn't get those judges in, didn't really bother. Or at least he didn't push it at the moment where he had the chance. He had a moment in time where he could, and he didn't. Apparently, he didn't really care
He
about
had
the
a
courts as
lot
much.
of opposition and a lot of people that really did everything they could.
There's lots
to
of
block
excuses
him.
that the Democrats can always offer, and they do. They have plenty of excuses, but very little action. So he had a moment in time in his first 2 years where he could have pushed judges. He did, right? The moment Trump comes in, like day one, they're pushing judges, right? They fill up the judiciary already. And then you go to Biden, and Biden, who demands, he wants to work with Republicans no matter what happens, right? He was just on Jimmy Kimmel talking about like how Mitch McConnell
He's the
is
president.
his friend, is his hold on. Yeah, and it's embarrassing. Yeah, it's fucking embarrassing. I agree.
He's
Biden being the president. Hold on 1 second.
We should have a
Hold on
president
second.
trying to
I
bring people
wanna
together
jump
to
in.
try
Bring
and
people
get
together.
shit
No.
done.
Bring
I'm sorry,
people
that's really
together that wanna
embarrassing.
hurt
When you
people?
have,
What the
when you
fuck?
have Mitch McConnell, who has talking about the Supreme Court judges, literally stole a seat from Obama.
Do you
right?
think that? Do you
Yeah,
think that
and you're
Obama
gonna
was
talk to
okay
him?
with that?
Yeah, and
And what was
are you going
Obama
to talk
supposed
to
to do
him?
about that?
Are you
How
just
was
going to
Obama
talk to
how-
him and bring them together,
how was
right?
Obama
And then that'll
supposed to
do it.
stop that from
That's
happening?
like embarrassing. This is like a,
Well, give me the
like a
course of action
low-level
Obama was
Joe
supposed to take.
Biden
Nothing
thoughts,
like
right?
calling
Like
a bigoted
low-level
fascist
Joe
your friend,
Biden
you know?
strategy. And when I say nice things,
Hold on, wait,
about
wait,
Mitch-
Jason,
Whoa,
what a
hold on.
stupid
Hey,
fucking statement.
Excuse me, I'm still
No,
talking.
that's what McConnell
Holy
was.
shit.
Is.
Holy shit, I'm still talking. Mitch McConnell, who stole, who said, yeah, we can't have you install a new Supreme Court justice so close to election. Okay, right? So they wait. And then as soon as he gets a chance, right, close to election, he installs a Supreme Court justice. A person who is completely bad faith, along with most of us, the Republican Party, but still, Joe Biden decides, oh, he's my friend. If I say enough nice things to him, he'll stop punching me in the face like he's been doing nonstop.
That's what
since
his
the
goal
moment I
is?
walked
Like,
into
what do you
office.
think is
It's
going on
embarrassing.
here?
So the point is, right, when
What do you
voter,
mean?
When a voter walks in to a voting booth, right, and sees that Democrats, they put them in office again and still have not accomplished the things they want, and that they've gotten themselves in the situation in the first place by not taking the Supreme Court and the judiciary seriously. Like, it's not irrational for them to go, like, I don't want to vote for this. I don't want to be a part of this system.
I wanna chime in
Obama, there
now.
wasn't anything Obama could have done to stop the Republicans from doing what they did. What they did was really fucking bad. It's probably one of the most gross, like, breaking of norms in all of American fucking history. Okay, no one's sitting here and defending that because, but what Obama, like,
But you want to bring them together, bring people together, right?
Yeah, because we have a fucking incredibly fucking split nation right now, and we probably want to try and find
Mitch
compromise
McConnell.
because we live in a
Mitch McConnell.
fucking.
They'll come
the same
together.
time.
Listen, I don't like Mitch McConnell. I don't know why you keep on saying
and-
Mitch McConnell's name like that's a dunk, okay?
No,
What I'm
yeah,
trying
it
to
is,
say
because
here.
I'm talking
Wait,
about it is a dunk.
Prime,
That's what
holy
I'm
shit.
talking
Listen,
about.
buddy, listen. What I'm trying to say is we live in a fucking democracy. Part of a democracy is trying to find compromise. If you're not able to find compromise with like
There is
half
no
of the fucking
compromise
nation.
here. Either you get the Supreme Court justice or you don't, right? It's a zero-sum
Wait,
game that
hold
way.
the fuck up! I've already okay. How was Obama supposed to get the Supreme Court justice into office?
I am talking about Mitch McConnell, like or Joe Biden, saying Mitch McConnell is his friend. Mitch McConnell. Or Joe
How does that
Biden
affect policy?
refusing that-
Because
in his negotiations, he's already given out goes like, well, I'm gonna reach out to my Republican colleagues, and I'm talking about like gun reform. Instead of having this strong position that we're gonna start with, hey, let's water it down. The legislation I want to push for Republicans who aren't going to side
Hey,
with you
guess
anyway.
what? We have a
Really, no
50-50
matter
split
what you
Senate
do,
right now.
they ain't
If
gonna
you don't
side
get
with
Republicans to
them
vote for something in the Senate, they're just never going to get
vote for
through.
it any which way.
wait. So
They aren't.
hang on. So like, I want to engage in this exchange, but I can tell the political awareness is very low.
Yeah,
so I
no, it really fucking sucks, Joe. It really sucks that there are so many people on here that don't
It is
realize that
very
if you don't
unfortunate.
have enough fucking Democrats in office, you can't get fucking Democratic bills
So,
through the fucking
okay,
Senate.
let me-
Yeah, it's really
everybody
fucking
here is-
crazy.
is
No, I'm sitting on a
pretty
panel
politically
with people
aware.
that don't understand that.
I'd say everybody here is pretty
I want to
politically
explain this
Who doesn't
very,
understand that?
very. I want to explain
But
this
it
as
seems
slow
like
as I
Prime
can.
does it. It seems like you
I
don't,
would
Jason.
love to. I want to explain this as slow as I
Oh, you're
can,
cute.
so you can. So you can.
I know
So
I
I
am.
really want you to understand, like, I don't think any of us who are in the opposition of your opinions want you to be lib-brained on these positions. Like, we want to push you further left, and I think that's the intent here.
I'm
And this is
I'm
my
giving
intent
the
as well.
reality of the
Let me
situation.
fucking finish. So here's the reality of my situation. I want to make, and I'm going to be a little bit personal here. Hurricane Sandy, a level 1 hurricane, fucked up my state. It left hundreds of thousands of people homeless who are still in effective homelessness right now. There are hundreds of thousands of people who have adverse effects due to the destruction that had to the community. My old township still to this day does not have a police department due to the damage of Hurricane Sandy. So I want to make this very, very clear. This is in 2012. If we fast forward to Hurricane Ida, I'm going to paint you this picture, which is why I rejected your hypothetical from the start. There is a bridge in Elizabeth that leads to this drastically dangerous flooding. And one thing that individuals were advocating for was the introduction of a reimagination of how we build communities so that they are less impacted by flooding. One of my friends was on these committees advocating for this in opposition of Democrats. When he posed the ideas, showed that the cost would be lower, definitively, of reimagining not only bridges, but roads, and also readjusting the housing. Democrats in his area rejected that. This was during the Sandy days. They warned that because what we saw in Sandy, we do not want to see this happen in our community. Democrats overtly rejected that. My friend is homeless to this day because of Hurricane Ida in 2021. So my friend advocated for policy in opposition to Democrats, gave them the clear solutions to how this could not happen in their community, warning all the way back in 2013 that this is not a possibility, it's an eventuality due to the danger of hurricanes, not only in New Jersey, but in the East Coast. Democrats ignored him and now he's homeless. How do I convince him to vote for Democrats? Because he is completely—
Maybe if there were more Democrats that were progressive on whatever committee, they would have been able to pass. They would have heard his
I want to
things.
jump in now.
He will never vote for Democrats again.
Well, I really
now-
love the
and
fucking
so-
individual fucking anecdote here, but like
No,
at the end of the
because-
day,
because-
wait, Joe, I'm just gonna I'm gonna respond to this, and I'm gonna really quick, I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna let fucking someone else speak. I'm just gonna respond very quickly, and then I'm gonna let other people talk.
I'm not finished with my point. The frustration that I have with this conversation is that there are so many people all over this country who are disenfranchised at the lack of action when it comes to Democrats, when it comes to policies, some of which have warned, in my case that I brought up, which is why I brought that up, years, that this is not something that you can just 1 + 1 = 0 and hope that's okay. We have to proactively push for this thing, or it's going to happen to our community.
And guess who could get into power and actually affect that change? Electing not moderate Democrats, but progressive Democrats into this
And they
position. So that when
tried
someone,
and failed.
well, then you have to get more
And
people
then-
to
and
vote
then-
for progressives.
here's what
It just
frustrates me.
seems like the
Here's what
positions that you
frustrates me.
have
Here's the thing that frustrates me. Here's the thing that
aren't
frustrates
popular
me.
enough
Here's the
to
thing that
fucking
frustrates
get
me.
elected
Here's
into
the thing that
office.
frustrates
Guess
me.
what?
Here
It's
is the thing
socialism
that
just
frustrates me.
isn't. Socialism just isn't popular.
I'm sorry,
enough,
did I bring up
all right? I don't
socialism?
know.
Or are
I'm
you
sorry.
trying to
the kind
inject
of
some
the
fucking—
socialist kind of like thoughts that you guys are putting forward. Yeah. Listen, I don't know if you're just too Twitter brains to fucking understand that these ideas aren't popular, but
everyone shut up. Everyone shut up. Zonia has been trying to break in for a while, right? So I'm going to give Zonia a spot to do so. The Nine Tails, then back to Joe.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to use one of the most extreme examples because I think it's something that is very telling and kind of helps explain this story. It's also going to date me because something I remember very well in 1992 was the significant turnout of people of color for that election voting Democrat, and were very motivated, very enthusiastic. It was a significant change in our electoral outcomes or turning out at the time that was talked about all over the news. And I was just starting to become aware of politics at the time because of that. It was being talked about so much. Well, what happened? Okay, so Democrats won. Not only did they win in the presidential election, but they also controlled the House and the Senate. And in addition to that, 2 years later, the Democrats brought forward the Tough on Crime bill of 1994 that then actually did significant, substantial harm to those very groups that turned out in record numbers to vote for that party. It actually genuinely did harm for generations that they're still recovering from today, right? So we talk about it today as one of the greatest crimes against against marginalized peoples, particularly communities of color, by the Democratic Party. When Hillary Clinton was running for election against Trump, one of the biggest things to come up was her participation in that and her push for that crime bill and the kinds of things that she was saying at the time. After her family and her party being largely supported by people of color, the kinds of things she was saying about super predators, right? So their vote actually brought in people, or helped to bring in people, that then turned around and hurt them and devastated their communities, tore their families apart, and just ruined many people's lives. So, and now I'm using the most extreme example because it's something that we can all recognize and we can all hail back to, with like the Clinton versus Trump election and such. And but this is something that happens even today, just in piecemeal, for a lot of people who are voting. They get to see and feel the effects, the negative effects of voting for these people who seem to be on their side, but then go around and implement policies that actually do harm to their communities. So that's something that's being overlooked. That's not being paid attention to. Now, yes, we do need to vote more progressive people in, and less of the people who are just pandering and then immediately turning around and betraying, those who they pandered to. But when the playing field seems to be fairly stacked, and all you're really left with are those same brand of people, like the Pelosi's of the world, right, and the Schumers of the world, you look back on generations of negative impact on your family and what it's done to people that people that you came from, and you go and you say, yeah, I don't want to do that again, right? So that's something we have to be empathetic to and be aware of and pay attention to.
Okay, really quick.
No. Nine Tails, then Joe, and Hansel. You can, because good people are responding to you.
Yes, Hansel, and I'm sorry to give you another thing you might want to write down. But this is actually, I'm going to start this with a question for the entire panel because I am curious. First of all, how okay is everybody with direct democracy as a response to electoral politics? Should we necessarily fear the tyranny of the masses argument, or is that a distraction? I kind of think it is, by the way, and I think we should. But more specifically, to me, it seems like this puts the left in a particularly difficult position, which is to say, and this is why I'm going to conclude with why we shouldn't shame people, which is to say that, we don't support the Electoral College. There's a lot wrong with it, and it's obviously not free, as a lot of people would probably idealize it to be. So to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense then to say, well, then it's your fault for not doing it. Because not only is the Electoral College the issue, there are material conditions. People, workers, for example, a lot of the time. There are probably very interesting reasons worth looking into that I wish I knew more about at this point. And I would have prepped for if I had more notice on why local voters are typically, more affluent than not. So, there's a lot more to consider than just like focusing on the individual or like doing the biopolitics, as Foucault would say, and saying like, no, like you're just an agent of choice, and so I direct the responsibility on you.
Just quickly, guys, we're in a level 2 hype train. Hop off the hype train if you can. We're at 0% down, 100% left. Thank you for the kind of people who hopped out before. I'll shout you guys out later. Thank you, Zonia Dead, for being so kind to skip the sub. 381 subs total from our friend Zonia Dead. Thank you. We're at 13% now because of her kindness. Of a level 2 hype train. 4 minutes left on the clock. Can we get to a level 3 hype train? Subs to the channel, give bits or give subs. If you're enjoying this content, liking what you're seeing so far, well, hit that like button, or the follow button, excuse me. I haven't done so yet. But also, subs to the channel, only $5 to do that. You get our emails, get ad viewing, and you'll be supporting this content, keeping us up and running. So if you got a resub, use your resubs, like a little bits, gifting a sub as well. Thank you so much. We're at 25%, 75% left, 3.5 minutes on the clock. Can we make it to level 3 hype train? Please help us out. We're getting closer there. So if you got a resub, use your resubs. If you have Amazon Prime / Prime Gaming, use that as well. On the channel, it'll help us out a ton. So shout out to the people who've been helping out so far. And I might break in because hype train. Okay, so we got Ninetales. All right, Joe, Jason, and yeah, Sansel. But people are going to be responding to you, Sansel. So Joe, go ahead.
I have a two-faceted question for Sansel, which requires him answering the first part of this question. So I'll ask this as plainly as I can. If there was a Democrat that is aligned with your values, but may have a difficult time winning, and is not aligned with values that you are passionate about, would you vote for them? And why is that the answer that you hold?
In the primaries or in the general?
It doesn't matter what election it is. I'm asking you, if there was a candidate that's a Democrat that is aligned with your values, but may have a difficult time winning and is not aligned with values that you are passionate about, would you vote for them?
In the primaries, yes. In the general, no.
Why?
Why? Because in the primaries, I feel like that's the time for you to try and push your party in the direction that you want, right? By trying to elect people that most align with your values. But once you get to the general election, if that person doesn't get to the general election, well, then you're getting to that 1 plus 0 equals 1 issue, right? Rather than 1 plus -2, leading you to like negative progress.
How long are you willing to vote for Democrats who do not hold values that you believe in?
How long? I agree with the values of Democrats, but if they like didn't agree with any of my values, I see. Here's the thing: you guys are pretending like
you're
Democratic.
You're running. I'll ask
No. I'm not running away from
so
shit. I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to answer your question. Well, I'm sorry. You asked me a question.
I believe you that you are running from my question, so I'm going to
ask the question again. I'm going to give you the exact same answer.
I'm going to you have to shut the fuck up, or this is never going to go anywhere.
I mean, you can ask the same question over and over and over.
You don't know what I'm going to say, so you have to stop talking. Can you do that?
Rephrase the question again?
I'm going to rephrase what you just said to me. Okay. I want you to agree or disagree if that is what you believe. That is what I was going to say. So please stop talking when I'm speaking. Can we do that for about 3 minutes?
You told me to answer your question. I tried to answer your question. Now you're mad at me. So go ahead and ask your question again.
Ask the question. But hey, guys, 63% of our level 1 hype train, or sorry, level 2 hype train. We're almost there to level 3. Subs to the channel, give biscuits. We're almost there. Thank you, Zonia, for another one. 75% done. 25% left. Can we make it? Less than 30 seconds on the clock. Sub to the channel, give bits or give subs to move us along. Help us out. If you're liking this content, support what we're doing. Zonia is amazing. Fucking love you, Zonia. Can we make it to level 3 hype train? Go ahead. Ask your question.
It's not a question. I'm trying to make sure I understand what you are saying. You are saying that in the primaries, you are willing to vote for a candidate that is aligned with your views, regardless of their ability to win. Is that correct?
Yeah, in the primary, sure.
Then at the federal level, you are saying that if your candidate loses in this case, you are willing to support whatever Democrat exists there, even if they are not aligned with what you believe and what you hold valuable.
If there's
is that what you are saying?
So if there's I'm trying to make sure I get your question completely correct so that you don't interrupt me again. So the question is if I vote for someone in the primaries, right, and then they make it to the general, or are you asking me if I vote for someone in the primaries, they don't win the primaries, but their opposition does, would I vote for that opposition in the general?
You said that in the primaries, you would vote for a candidate that's a Democrat that is aligned with your values, regardless of their ability to win. You then said that if that candidate were not to win, that you would support whatever Democrat who could win. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or am I
That's why
Okay.
that's why I asked the clarifying question. Yeah.
Gotcha. So my question to you then is, how long are you willing to vote for candidates who are not aligned with your values? Because in this, you said that in the primaries, you're willing to support a candidate that is for your values, regardless of their ability to win. Now we are at the federal level. This candidate is past the primary stage. Your candidate lost in this case, but you also said you're willing to vote for a Democrat no matter what at the federal level, regardless of their values. Now my question is, and it seems like this might be where the rub is, you're saying definitively then you're willing to vote for a Democrat no matter what, regardless of what their values are. Is that what you believe?
Not because they're a Democrat, because the Democratic Party generally aligns with my values.
So then my question then would be, would you support a candidate that's aligned with your values, regardless of their political affiliation, at all levels?
If they, I feel like we're like asking, like, I feel like we're like going like through three different like levels of questions. Okay. I'm trying to understand. I'm not trying to be like shitty or anything. I'm not trying to like run away from any questions. I'm genuinely trying to understand. Okay. So let's say we have Joe Smith and Bob's not Smith, Bob Richards. Okay. John Smith is my candidate in the primaries. All right. I vote for him and he wins. All right. Now in the general, are you asking me if I would vote for him?
You're switching.
I'm sorry.
I'm
genuinely trying to understand.
You're switching what I asked you.
I'm not trying to.
So it's very clear that if a candidate that holds your values were to win, you would vote for them. That's what you said pretty much the entire panel. What I'm asking you, and I'll say it again. If there is a candidate, and we'll take Democrat out of the picture here, because we might be getting stuck on this. If a
How
candidate,
about like Bernie or Hillary, right? Like I voted for.
No. If there's a candidate, let's get the names out of here. Let's just get to the direct thing. If there is a candidate on a ballot at the primary level, you've accepted that you're willing to vote for them regardless of their ability to win. However, to include Democrat in this again, you said that you favor Democrats, which is why I put Democrat in there. So I'm going to re-include it now. So we have a Democratic candidate who has values that are lined up with you, and at the primary, you vote for them, and I'm saying that they lose. Now the other individual,
I would vote for the other Democrat. Yeah, for sure.
Yes,
Absolutely.
and then my question is,
30 seconds left on the clock. Can we,
Sorry, that's my fault. Can you give him like one more minute? It's my fault.
Well,
then
I mean,
my question,
so I mean, subs
yeah,
the
sure.
channel. I mean, just like subs the channel. Give us
Sorry.
Yeah, we have
And
less
then
than 30 seconds left. Can we make it to a level 4 hype train?
I didn't want to take
guys,
up
this is
his
how
time.
we allow all this to happen. So if you like what we're doing, please support this community. And listen, we get to Zonia Dead gifting with 1,000 bits. God damn, you're amazing, Zonia. Thank you so much. Anonymous Gifter, thank you for gifting us up as well. 66% done, 75% done, 25% left. We have seconds left on the clock. Can we make it to a level 4 hype train? Not sure if we can, but like one way or the other, I think the people who've been helping us out and pushing it along, much appreciated. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
So again, we understand that in this situation I'm laying out for you, the candidate that is aligned with your values has lost. And now the candidate that's not aligned with your values, who's a Democrat, is running. And you said that you would vote for them regardless. Is that correct? Now we're at the federal level.
I voted for Hillary.
Okay, I don't care. So the question I have for you is, how long are you willing for that process I just laid out to you? The process of you voting for a candidate at the primary level, them losing, and then at the federal level, voting for their opposition. especially if their opposition is against the values that you hold. How long are you willing to do that? You said earlier in the conversation, you said as long as this takes. What did you mean by that when you said that?
What did I mean by that? I would rather us not regress by voting in Republicans who are very willing to rescind any protections that we've built up for gay people, for trans people, for black people, et cetera, et cetera. I will always take the party that is most aligned with my values, right? I'll choose individual candidates that are most aligned with my values in the primaries, but I will choose the party that is most aligned with my values in the general.
Do you think it's possible for a candidate that is running at the federal level to be disaligned with what you believe to value and disaligned with the Democrat Party?
I cannot conceive of a Democrat running outside of like the convention of like the Democratic platform winning and then also like getting to the general at all, right? Like if someone ran as a ran as a Democrat but had a whole bunch of Republican, like had their entire platform like perfectly aligned with the Republicans, and I voted for the progressive in the primaries, and then the person that had the Republican values got to the general, like, I mean, yeah, I probably still would vote for them because they're not like again, no individual politician is their own island, right?
So from what I hear, it sounds like the reason why you hold this position is because you believe that Republicans are in direct opposition to the Democrat Party.
They're in direct opposition to my values.
I think we agreed that we weren't going to cut each other off. I'm going to restate what I said. You believe that Republicans are antithetical to your values, so much so that you're willing to vote for a Democrat who might be in opposition to your values and in opposition to the party just because they're a Democrat. Is that the position that you hold?
Absolutely, because again, I don't think that any politician in the United States is an island, right? They are still beholden to their party. So yeah, I would vote for them. Because the Republican is going to be worse. Otherwise, the other person would have just run as a fucking Republican. I understand. Okay, go ahead.
I laid out to you that this Democrat in question is disaligned with your values and disaligned with the values of the Democrat Party. And you said that you would vote for them regardless of that, because the Republican Party is also disaligned with the values
but the Republican Party, because the way our electoral system works is like you have to like vote, you have to like caucus with someone in Congress, right? There's a Democratic caucus, there's a Republican caucus, and like the Senate especially, if you don't have a one caucus that has a super majority, then you're not going to get anything through. So I would rather have someone who is like a Joe Manchin type as a Democrat being able there taking a spot in the Senate, because then the Democrats will actually be able to bring bills to the floor of the Senate. If Joe Manchin did not get elected in 2020, then, did he even run? He might have been, if let's say Joe Manchin was running and he won in 2020, then I would say that, I would take Joe Manchin over a Republican any day, because otherwise all the bills that we passed in Congress wouldn't even be brought to the floor in the Senate. Yeah, absolutely. 1,000,000%. Why is that even a question?
The conflict that I have is that I laid out for you a situation where a Democrat is disaligned with not only the views of the Democrat Party,
and I just explained to you why it's still okay to vote for that person.
I thought we were going to try this level of charitability. You said that you are in support of a Democrat that is not only disaligned with your values, but disaligned with the values of the party because they are a Democrat. And then you said, additionally, because Republicans are disaligned with Democrats. So how is this politician that you're supporting that's disaligned with your values and the values of the Democrat Party any different than a Republican? Why do you want to make that distinction?
I just said, because if we have 50 Democrats and a vice president who is a Democrat in the Senate, then we can actually bring bills to the floor. We won't even be able to bring them to the floor if it's the Republicans in office in the Senate, if they hold a majority in the Senate. So yeah, in like a situation like that, 1,000,000%.
I don't think a lot of people who are farther left than you, which seems to be
Most people
a
on this
lot of
panel.
individuals, would agree with what
Yeah,
you're
that's because
saying.
they don't understand. They don't understand how our electoral system works.
I don't think that's the case. I just think
No, it's
that
1,000,000% the case,
I
because
think
you're
they just
arguing with me
believe-
on the fact
I'm
that
gonna-
like this, that the system's in place right now. Like, do you agree that if we had 49 Democrats and 51 Republicans, that none of the bills that have been passed in Congress would even be seen on the Senate floor?
We haven't exactly been getting a lot passed, so.
Okay, but they've been brought to the
That's a good
floor. They can be
argument
brought
to
to the
but
floor.
hear me out. Hear me
nothing
out.
We can do
happens.
things like that. We can
There's
do
no
things like
material
the
change. There's no change in material
so the
conditions.
thing-
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, we had the omnibus bill. We had the omnibus bill go through because we had 50 Democrats in
Nice
office.
corporate giveaways. That was
You gotta
wonderful.
wrap it up. You gotta wrap it
Oh,
up.
okay. So like, okay, fuck off.
So the reason why I ask you this, Sanso, I'm going to make a definitive claim about what I believe you to believe. I believe that you are just a liberal, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being a liberal. But I think the desire with Nine Tails especially, and myself especially, and even Jason to an extent, is that we just want to push you further left in the idea that Democrats ain't shit. Sometimes they are the shit, but most of the time, by and large, they ain't shit. And using the fear of Republicans and the fear of republicanism as this driving force to vote for Democrats is something that is a bridge too far for a lot of individuals, especially those disenfranchised with the political process.
Okay,
And-
Joe, really quick, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so did you hear the my logic behind why I would still choose like the blue dog Democrat? Did you hear my justification?
I reworded what you said and you agreed with it.
At what point? You're saying that I'm willing to just like sell out all of my values, but the reason that I'm okay with voting for that person is because we have a system in place so that we can pass bills, right? Do you recognize that?
What I recognize is that you have
If
a
you had the
unwilling.
choice, sorry, go ahead. I'm interrupting
I'm done.
you.
We're done. We can close out.
Okay. Okay. If you had the choice between Joe Manchin and a centrist,
We are
Republican-
done. We can close out. Sound
Okay, so you don't. So all I'm hearing is that you don't understand how the fucking Senate works. Okay, that's all I'm hearing from you because
Soy.
you're not willing to
Soy
engage
out.
with that.
Soy out.
Oh yeah,
We're
I'm
done.
soying out. You're unable
done.
to engage with the actual topic at hand because you don't
yeah.
know how our fucking
I
electoral
tried
system
my
works.
best to be charitable with you, and it's clearly a path.
You're
that's
not
too
able to be
far.
charitable to me because you're too fucking stupid to engage with what I just said, Joe.
Okay. Wow.
And you're white.
Oh wow. Oh, I'm so fucking
Like,
offended.
I don't know, like we're just gonna just use words back and forth that mean nothing, you know? Like, okay, like
Wow.
Well,
All right.
this has been an interesting debate between two people on the panel.
I lost interest. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I can't
Yeah.
agree with that. I lost interest like 5 or 6 minutes ago at least. Sorry, guys.
yeah,
Well,
same.
It's fine. Well, that's when we ran out of time, so that makes sense, Genevieve.
Did Jason's internet cut out, or is he just gone?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Guys,
Zonia.
I'm on a very strict
Oh.
time schedule, it appears.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. We're going to close this out, but we're going to continue on with the content as always. We will have open walk on panel right after this, right? So the content does not end. Stick around. We have more for you as we always do. Hit that like button. You haven't done so yet. Hit that like button. Make sure notifications or the follow button. Why am I saying like button? It's not YouTube. What the fuck? Right? Hit the follow button right now. And make sure notifications are on so you know when we're going live. Expect for social chat for our social media. We have we got Twitter where we post things, let you know what's going on. Check out Twitter. Discord is where everything happens. Hard, so the community wants you part of the Discord. Jump on in. We'll be having a panel there, so jump there. TikTok, we're posting clips for the show, entertaining clips. Check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. Subscribe to that or follow, whatever. I don't know. Do a thing there, please. YouTube is where you find the VODs. Like, comment, subscribe, consider becoming a YouTube member by hitting that join button if you enjoy getting this content all the time, 7 days a week. Okay, I'm going to give an outro to all my all these amazing individuals and guys. Gals really who are left here. I want to give you space to give some sort of outro, like in terms of like your final thoughts on this topic. Okay, so please do that. Get in whatever you want to say, Sonia.
All right. Yeah. So fun panel. A bit of a contest between you two, Sansel and Joe, but still fun panel. And I think probably to wrap up this, like my position on it, I think that, as mentioned in my intro, there is some complicity to or complicitness, so whichever it is, to your not participating in the electoral process when there are people who are up for re-election or are running for election who have championed harmful policies, or even written and drafted and implemented or voted on harmful policies that are harmful to you. So I still want to stand with that position, but I think it's very important for us as a society to put pressure on our representatives to not just, and of course our voting population, to not just dismiss those who or demean or demonize those who abstain from the electoral process because they don't feel represented, or who cast a vote for a third party because they don't feel represented. And I think we need to put pressure on our representatives and our politicians to look into that, to understand it, and to move into more progressive directions, as well as we also need to motivate our own people within our communities to get involved and take their issues to the field and actually fight for them, and become even be politicians themselves and run for local office and work their way through the electoral process, hopefully eventually representing their districts and their states on the national level with progressive policies that actually benefit them, as opposed to just betraying them once they get into office, which we've seen time and time again. So we need to have that empathy. I think that's very important, to have that empathy, have that understanding, and actually do the work to change things. Other than that, I think that a lot of you guys were kind of talking past each other at times, because I think there were many times where you could have agreed, but then still kind of talk past each other. So it'd be nice if we kind of saw that. I don't know, just a little more charitability overall on the panel. But then lastly, let's see if we can get another hype train going before we move to the open panel. Get Prime some subs or some bits here to kind of pay him back for the time that he spends putting up with these kinds of shenanigans. Dealing with everybody talking at once and talking over him and talking over each other, and just generally dealing with a headache on our behalf, bringing this to us 7 nights a week. So if anybody has the ability to donate a little bit without breaking the bank or anything, that'd be great. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Sonia's been incredible, and thank you for the kind support. Seriously, your direct support. That means a lot, Sonia. Shout out to Sonia. She's been great to us for a very, very long time. So shout out to Sonia. Everyone, check out her channel. Check out everything that she does. And check out her fucking Twitter account. That's helped us have this conversation in the first place, right? Her responding to someone, right? Getting in her dunks. She wasn't really dunking, but getting her dunks.
I do memes, a lot of memes.
Yeah. But yeah, shout out to her. Yeah, and support the channel. But I do this out of love. I mean, how could I ever have it? Why would this ever cause me a headache, right? I mean, we had these two wonderful individuals going at each other head to head and not listening to me when I talk to them. That's amazing. I love that. I want it every day. So if you want me to be doing that every day, sub the channel. All right. Let's go to our friend Madam Genevieve. This was. I want to say this is unusual. It's not. But Madam Genevieve, thank you for stopping by and jumping in. I thought you had a lot of valuable things to say, so I do appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, and I really did enjoy myself, even if things got a little lost in the weeds towards the end and I couldn't help but zone out those last few minutes. But I do think this is a really important topic, and I think that it's it's really great that you decided to have this panel. I don't support shaming people who are not voting, but I think it's super, super crucial to explain to them and encourage their participation, because it's the only way we really have at this point to make sure that our opinions are heard. It's not a perfect system, I recognize that, but we can fix it by working from within, I believe. With that being said, I hope to make some more regular appearances here in the future. You can follow me on Twitter, Madam_Genevieve, and that's going to have all my links and all my updates right there. Thanks again, Prime.
Absolutely. It was _Genevieve. I tried to look for you on Twitter. I didn't know.
Yeah, there's somebody else who took it without the underscore. I don't know who she is, but mine has an underscore.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you. And yes, we will hit you up with invites in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Let's go to our friend Ninetales. And again, we're so happy that Ninetales came through. I was a part of this. Nothing's changed since you've been gone, Ninetales. It's literally the same thing. But thanks for being around.
I take offense to that. I think I did a lot better than I used to.
No, not to you. I'm saying here. Like,
oh,
nothing's
here.
changed here. Yeah.
I mean, I never really paid that much attention. I just enjoy the conversations one way or I don't. Yeah, so thank you for having me. I will be on the open panel as well. Do I want to plug myself much? No. Just, yeah, follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/M9Scarlet. That's the letter M, the number 9 is Scarlet with 2 T's and no E's at the end because I've been getting asked that a lot. So yeah, great Twitter tag to plug myself with on streams. Yeah, I think the biggest problem that I see here is that, first of all, people are who are advocating for voting more than they should. I figure they're, first of all, a little bit too okay with the Electoral College and the current state of the electoral system. And that needs to be addressed a lot more. If people who feel disenfranchised are going to feel like they're going to vote, so does money in politics. It is such a huge issue, and I don't think a lot of people really consider it when they're voting, but it is something that subconsciously makes them feel like, why am I going to vote? Because none of these politicians really care in the end, so long as they get their paychecks, kind of deal. And as cynical as that is, we got to remember that if we're going to talk about people, they don't see things from the level that we're talking about them at. And it's really hard to say exactly how somebody will see an issue one way or another. And I think it actually gets really complicated if you're not going to get past the politics by looking at polls and stuff like that, which I was not prepared to do. Otherwise, I probably would have brought that up more. And so the final thing is, we're putting too much. First of all, try to support direct democracy and, if not, ranked choice voting whenever possible. But second of all, we need to stop blaming the voter. We need to do more action on the ground at the local and regional level, or I guess for the states, the state level, and for Canada, the provincial level, to really bolster that side of things. I actually think the right's doing a much better job with that. And unless we're willing to address the complications that face the average voter, it's probably not something we should be navigating with analyses, because it's not wise, in my opinion.
Okay. Let's go to my man, MVP Joe Lewis. Joe Lewis, dude, I reach out to you all the time, and for a good reason. Thank you, Joe Lewis, for coming through. You really just got off of work. It's I'll jump in. And I think the panel is better for it. So thank you so much for your contributions, as always, buddy.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. And look, despite the disagreements and the argumentation, is that I think everybody's deep desire is just to push people farther left. And sometimes when you see advocacy in some type of way, you might react in different things. Things that I'm kind of very strongly against is incrementalism. And unfortunately, liberalism at its core involves some level of incrementalism at varying levels. Some people are farther than others, and that's okay. Like, people are going to get radicalized how they get radicalized on certain positions and issues. And I'm very excited to see people's butterflies. I will say that within the topic broadly, voting is just one tool that we can use in the political process. And my frustration is that people, based on their language and how they talk about things, sometimes advocate for voting as the only tool to enact change. And I think that there needs to be, for heralding back to the tweet, a better participation in the political process. That can be advocating for policy change at the local level. That can include joining committees, whether it be at your local council, because there are plenty of committees that go unseated, especially in the environmental space, that need people talking about and researching these policies. You can do this in the way of education. So you can go into particular fields and dedicate your entire life's work to studying and approaching these things. I want to give a shout out to Bela. Bela TV is one of those individuals who's a strong climate activist, and her climate advocacy. People remember her when she called somebody a bitch, but I remember her for political advocacy. And that's something that you can do. That's also participating in the political process. You can join a local organization that is aligned with your values, and they can support policy on the behalf of yourself and others. And these are all just tools in the box that we choose to participate in. And I want people, very broadly speaking, to not treat the voting process and electoralism as the be all end all to ways that you can enact change. Because if I'm being quite frank, for me, it's not about, like, the change that I want in the world, I'm not going to see. But my children might, my children's children might. It's no longer about me, it's about them. And making sure that they see a world better than what I put it off in. Because I don't want to be if I'm going to racially identify myself, the hundreds of thousands of Black Americans who protested during the Civil Rights Act. And that was the peak of their political advocacy. A couple marches and the March for Jobs in DC. I don't want that to be me. I don't want my children and my legacy to be, well, you know, he did protest a lot during George Floyd, and he did, you know, like, do a couple of local protests and advocacy groups, like, but, you know, like, he didn't do anything outside of that, so fuck him. Like, no, like, this is a little self-serving in that regard, but I want to feel like at least I fought for something while I'm on this fucking earth. And a lot of the changes that I want, I'm not even gonna see, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I have solace for that. But just because I'm a little nihilistic in that doesn't mean I'm not gonna advocate for things that are better for Americans. Anyway, that was a long spiel. Twitch.tv/Joe Lewis. The name change that there's two O's, excuse me. So it's JOOELEWIS. I do a lot now, so streaming's a little bit sporadic. But maybe I'll still stick on the Prime panel and call some more people white. It was very satisfying.
Thank you so much. We're gonna go to Jason next, and we'll go to Sansa. So Jason, thank you for coming through and being part of this as well. Jason, you can give your final thoughts as well.
Sure. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I always like coming on the Prime panels. I am Jason Society, Jason_Society on Twitch, Jason Society, all one word, on Twitter. Sorry about the power outage. That's why I dropped off. My view on this really hasn't changed. I think voting is one tool in a tool belt of many tools. Are there problems with voting? Hell yes. Should we work on changing the system so it works better for us? Hell yes. In the meantime, should we still go vote, even if it's for third party, even if it's for no choice? Yes, absolutely. It doesn't hurt to have your voice heard. It's never going to hurt to have your voice heard. Even if you disagree with what's out there, put it out there, put it out in the ether. Let somebody, because somebody's counting these votes. Somebody knows what's happening. Somebody can put their finger on the pulse of what's happening. So do that, but you don't necessarily have to fall in line with Dems or Republicans. If you find somebody that's a third party, go for it. Try to build up that shit from the grassroots and start on your local level. That's a perfect place to start doing this shit. You know, build up from the local level on up, and that's how you make change. I talk a lot about it on my stream about how cannabis has become legalized in 37 states through a grassroots movement. And I think it's a model that we can look at for how we can make changes in other places, in other areas, and policy specific changes. And we can do that shit together. I do believe that, but it takes a lot of work. And yeah, it's not just going to be at the polls, and we should never rely on just voting. That said, thanks again for having me on.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, we have our friend Sanso. Again, I'm so happy to have you back around, Sanso. We need to have you on the panel more. I think you're really fun. So I'm very grateful that you could join with us. So the panel, a lot of people came at you pretty hard on this particular panel, and so which is surprising. I actually didn't see that coming. So I wanted to give you the last spot, especially since, as Joe reminded us, you're a white man, and it's only customary. So last word goes to you.
Yeah, sometimes I forget, so it's nice to be reminded every once in a while. So yeah, at the end of the day, I look at the systems that we have in place, and I want to affect change within that system. I don't know why everyone is talking about voting as just one tool. No one said otherwise. Of course, there's other things that we need to do in order to try and affect change in the world, right? Whether it's charity, whether it's some form of like socialist direct action, or mutual aid, or anything like that. All these things are really good tools in a tool belt to try and help people and make their lives better, while we try to affect change in the electoral system. I don't know. When I look at these things, I want to be able to understand why legislation doesn't get passed. That's why I brought up the Senate rules about how we bring legislation to the floor. I think that's really, really important. Even if we elect someone like Joe Manchin, it's really important to have a majority in the Senate if you want to pass bills, or even bring them to the fucking floor. Joe said something about this is why young people don't vote. I would agree, but I think that by saying the system is inherently flawed to the point where our values aren't being lived out is in fact contributing to the reason why young people don't vote. What we need to tell young people, what we need to tell everybody, is the way that we get legislation passed is by voting. When you elect people into office, they put bills forward, they vote for bills. Okay, it's not the only thing in our tool belt, but it's certainly one of the largest. And if you don't understand the systems, then you can't really adequately critique them. So
Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, we will continue on for Open Walk On panel, so stick around for that. But yeah, I'm so happy that we had this. I think this was very interesting panel. So anyone here can join us for Open Walk On panel, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion in my community. I know they appreciate just as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
also, oh no, she already left.